Okay, welcome to the show, Michael. You can just keep talking. Yeah, you were before we start recording very much in flow. So yeah, just keep saying what you were saying.
Yeah, hi Vincent. So yeah, one of the things that I was saying is when people look at carnivore, people want to have such a black and white description of what it is. But in nature, nothing is really completely black and white. So one of the things that I would like to add is, you go to Asia and you look at tigers, which is the carnivore of Asia. And if there's berries on the floor, they'll eat it. And if they have access to fruit, they'll eat it. But the reality is depending on where the animal is, and what the environment's like, there may be so much competition for that fruit that they'll never really get the chance. So that's a lot of times when, you start looking at lions, and I actually was on the lion diet for almost 3 months, and I didn't realize it was even called the lion diet at the time, and
What
we'll
is the lion
backtrack.
diet?
So the lion diet is actually consuming only meat, salt, and water.
Yeah, I
That's
see.
it. You don't have butter. You don't have eggs. You don't really eat. I mean, some people will throw in some fowl, but the reality is it's red meat. And what's interesting with that, and you start looking at lions themselves, is if you give them a piece of fruit, like, and you've seen it in the zoo, if they and I'm sorry that it's not a wild situation, but if you give a lion a fruit, I mean, it will eat it. And in that same environment, and there was a video that went viral, I would say, I want to say a few weeks ago, where they fed a lion, I believe it was vegetables. I can't remember what kind, if it was spinach or whatever it may be. And when that lion tasted it, it gave like the most disgusting roar. Like, why would you give this to me? And you felt it. But at that same time, if you go and you Google, lion eating watermelon, I mean, the lion does not have that same reaction, which to my mind tells me that there's something there where, they don't eat fruit as a consistent part of their diet. But if something is available and they were able to get it, they would. And that kind of brings me back to our ancestral mindset. Because in reality, we were hunter gatherers, but we were gathering while we were following. So we weren't in a situation where we were able to just plant. We would maybe be in different areas throughout the year, and maybe, once a year we'd find ourselves in that same spot per se. So maybe something we had left there previously, like some seeds, might have grown into something, but it was never anything that would have been available like what we think of today. So when people say, hunter gatherers, they ate all these tubers and all these vegetables. I mean that.
There's honey and berries all the time. That's every day on the
Yeah,
daily buffet.
yeah, if they could get it, because I mean, it's
Yes.
because your body, you don't know when you're gonna get that source of where you could literally store fat. Because when you're in a situation like me and you're eating meat and you're eating fat, unless you're over consuming those calories to where your body has to store it, which if you've ever been in a situation where you try and eat a lot of meat and fat, it's hard to overeat it.
Yeah,
Because
oh yeah, I know, because of the proteins. I mean, so it's so pretty hard, I think, to if you just eat meat to be overweight or not to lose weight.
Yeah, and I have seen some situations where people that I've worked with, they have some eating disorders where they tend to overeat, but that in itself, it's that they're having an issue with their hunger hormones and they haven't adapted correctly to tell them, hey, Michael, you've eaten enough, it's time to stop. And in some cases, people's hormones get so messed up that even when they get to that point where they're like, oh, I should stop, they continue to engorge themselves. And that's a very, very small percentage. Out of everybody I've ever talked with in this community, I would probably say maybe one in thousands that I personally met with that has had that issue. But that was more something that was directly to them. It wasn't specifically as like a general issue that takes place within carnivore. Because what happens is a lot of people when they start carnivore, I mean, the first week they lose a lot of weight and they'll say, "Oh, I
Yes.
lost all this weight and it stopped." And what they don't realize is the weight that they lost, it wasn't actually their true weight. That was them shedding away the inflammation. As we eat different foods, and especially when you get away from meat and fat and you're consuming carbs, whether that be vegetables, whether you're looking at grains, whatever your diet may be, the moment you start to consume those foods, your body needs to break it down. And the way that your body does that is with insulin, which is a master hormone and it's involved in everything. So if you are consuming something that, throughout the day where you're consistently getting this insulin release, because your body is saying, oh, you have too much energy in your bloodstream. We got to deal with this. We have to store this because this isn't healthy for us. So your body's creating the short-term response to be able to deal with something so you could flourish right now. But that doesn't mean that your body is supposed to go through that short-term response of insulin release to be able to get all this excess energy out of your system constantly throughout the day. And that's kind of like where the issue we kind of came in a society. As I've looked internally, as well as with everybody that I've also interacted with this, I'm in a strong belief that insulin is a double-edged sword. That as amazing as it is to be able to allow you to function and have the energy that you need to be able to complete whatever it is that you're accomplishing to do, it's also, let's say, cracking the system a little bit. So as you start to produce more insulin and, your adrenal glands and everything is starting to react to it, it gets to a point where if you start now going back to where we were with the hunter-gatherers all this time ago, they would never have been in a situation where they were eating fruit and, tubers, and they were eating it multiple times throughout the day. And then right before they go to sleep, they're going to eat it again. I mean, it's just not how they function, because in nature, you don't have this availability for glucose or these carbs that convert into glucose or fructose, which is why I believe that as humans and as animals, we have such a strong attraction to it. Because we know on a subconscious level, especially, in our brain, that this is something that we could store. We don't, and we're based internally, and the way our maps are, our body inside doesn't know that we're in the 21st century. Our bodies don't know that you could go to a fast food restaurant, and just order whatever you want. I mean, it's just something that our body doesn't know. So when your body's releasing these different hormones, it doesn't have this sight that we have of like, oh, well, this is how we need to do it. It's either we're releasing these hormones or we're not. So when we start going into where we were being hunter-gatherers, if we had an availability for honey, we went crazy on it. And an example of that today is go look at the Hadza. And Paul Saladino did an amazing job being able to describe what it is like to live with that modern day hunter-gatherer tribe, which is one of the last tribes that are almost living as close to as they can today as they did back then. And the only thing that's basically stopped them is the government says you can't hunt megafauna anymore, which has allowed us to become the way we are. I mean, there were mammoths, elephants, all these massive animals on every continent. And that's what we went after. So their limitation on what big game they can go after is something that's kind of affected their diet a little bit. But when it comes to every other aspect of their life, it gives us this insight into what life was. And if we pay attention to the way they're living today, how we could adapt what they utilize to our own lifestyles, which will actually allow us to be more optimal. And yeah, so it's super fascinating when you start looking at all of that. So
Yes.
So then you start going into today, where we have come up as a society where we want to make money so we can live the lives that we have. So how do we do that? We have to create product. And when we create product, how do we sell it? Well, we have to create a market for it. So one of the easiest ways to do it is, people have been drinking milk forever. Well, I just created this product out of nuts. How do I convince people to drink this product that I just invented versus something that we've been drinking for millennia? Well, tell them it's healthy, scare them about saturated fat, give them false information, tell them that the trans fat that comes naturally in dairy isn't healthy, which the trans fat from dairy and the trans fat from our industrial process of how we create fats for our hyper-processed foods, there's absolutely no comparison. So when we start looking at how we react as society, if you give somebody sugar, whether it be sucrose, fructose, whatever it is, you're going to like it because your body is saying, hey, we have food. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So what do we have
energy.
to do? We need to store as much energy as possible. And that's where we get ourselves into troubles, because us being people, we love options. We love being able to have a reserve of the options we like. And if the options that we're told are healthy really aren't, well, now we got ourselves in the societal rut that a lot of us, including myself, find ourselves in.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, then when there's an industry that tells you that it's healthy to eat that kind of food, and let's say that you deserve to consume that kind of foods, and including or considering the fact that your system is very susceptible to glucose rewards response, yeah, then you're gonna overconsume it anyways.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, your body's goal today is to do what it can to survive for tomorrow. Your body does not think about living 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 years from now. Your body
No,
says, how can I do what I need to do right now so you
the
could
next
potentially,
72 hours,
yeah,
maybe.
literally,
That's how,
because
that's roughly your glycogen stores in your liver and your muscles. Yeah, maybe you can say around 45 to 72 hours.
yeah, let's live for the next 45, 72 hours so you could procreate, so we could pass on our genome and life can
Yeah,
continue as we know it. That's
yeah,
all our
exactly.
body cares about.
That's a,
Everything else, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
no, that's all right. It's a pretty primitive approach by the body, but that's how it appears to work.
It is. And we bless ourselves with our modern science and our medical fields to where we've been able to understand the body in certain ways. But I also think we've focused on the body in such a way to where when we see an issue present itself, we're like, okay, there's an issue. Let's deal with that issue. You have a fire, let's just put out the fire. But that doesn't mean that those embers that are underneath the fire aren't still burning. And it doesn't mean there's not something that can get that fire going again.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at things in a more primitive way, in a more ancestral way, that's when you get to the point where you're not going to the doctor for a medication. You're going to a doctor to make sure that everything is still operating correctly, that there's no signs in your blood work that something might be going on that isn't. Because if your body is telling you something, if you're feeling you have a toothache or you have a headache or you're like me and you have psoriasis, that's your body's only way to be able to tell you that, hey, buddy, there's something going on here.
Yeah, right.
I can't write it down for you, but I could give you signs. And if you are able to pay attention to yourself, what I'm trying to say, you'll be able to realize that there are certain things that will cause you issues and something that doesn't. So like, for example, if I decided that I was going to have a piece of crust from pizza, I feel the itch in my skin. I mean, it'll happen so quick. And
Really?
yeah, because my body knows that that's something that has caused an issue. I mean, I didn't start eating this way until about a little over 2 years ago. So when your body is, and I grew up in the 90s. So in the 90s, food pyramid,
Yeah.
process this, Sunny D, taste the sun, every type of candy you could think of.
Grains are good
The
for
fruit
you.
roll up.
Oatmeal for breakfast.
Right? I mean, you go down the list. Oatmeal, Lego my Eggo, the Lunchables, which is why our entire generation is addicted to charcuterie. I mean, we have it ingrained in our system, and that's what we grew up on. So when you go to a point where you remove it and you allow your body to heal, and now your body has felt so good, and now suddenly this ingredient comes in, your body's like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is that? I thought we had an agreement here, buddy. We
Yeah,
weren't going to do
we
this
had a deal,
anymore.
buddy.
Like here, what? Here comes a little bit of a skin itch, just to let you know that this does cause us problems, and you need to pay attention to that skin itch. And when people don't pay attention to those signs, they just build. They build, they build, they build, they build, and then it gets to a point where
Chronic disease.
chronic disease, chronic inflammation. And when that starts happening, you could have autoimmune issues. It could damage your endothelium. It could start the process of heart disease. If you're stressed out and you're worried about all these things, I mean, you have cortisol going, which, I mean, if you know anything about cortisol, I mean, that is your fight or flight. But did you know when you're sitting down and you're studying and you have something coming down the line, your body's releasing cortisol. It's saying, hey, buddy,
Yeah.
you need to pay attention.
To be alert. Yeah.
So it's not just because you're in trouble. I mean, these hormones are being used constantly throughout the day. And cortisol, I mean, do we know how cortisol works? Like, how do you know how cortisol gets you to be able to think faster and more efficiently, be able to move quicker, be able to get you to that next level?
I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure actually, no.
So cortisol releases a flood of glucose
Mm.
into your bloodstream.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Fast and the Furious, but when they're about to go
Yeah.
win that race and they click those buttons and suddenly everything kind of like starts to blur out a little bit and you kind of go forward, that's almost like what's happening in your mind. You're becoming so super focused, so tunnel visioned. If you need to study, that's the only thing you're studying. And God forbid there's noise that starts taking you away from what you're trying to focus on, creates even more stress and you get even more cortisol going. So cortisol is literally the release of glucose. That extra release allows your body to be able to do what it needs to do.
Yes.
But when that happens, your body is going to need glucose again because it wants to have that reserve. So what do? You're gonna go
Well,
consume. You're gonna go consume your chips. I mean, if you're
yeah.
somebody that's not paying attention and you're not already down this avenue, I mean, you're gonna go get your candy. You're gonna get hungry for your break. You're gonna get crave something because you need to replenish. You need to replenish that. And when you stop getting into this roller coaster and your body isn't fighting with this insulin release, your body isn't now trying to deal with trying to get more glucose back into your body, which when you consume, what's going to happen? You're going to have another insulin release because your body's going to want the glucose. So as you start to see, there's this nasty roller coaster of
Yes.
your insulin's going up, it's going down, but now you're focusing on our modern day jobs. So your cortisol is going up and now you're getting more insulin, but now your body's depleted in insulin. So you're getting yourself in this nasty roller coaster of basically trying to keep your body at a level point, which it can't be because it's burning gasoline. It's not burning diesel. And that's actually how I look at our different fuel sources. Glucose is a fast burning fuel source. But when you look at fat, it is a slow burning, constant fuel source. And anybody
Yes.
who's made the switch and once you become fat adapted, which takes about 21 days, and I help people get through that phase because it's a lot when you're going through it and you don't really understand. And that was something I went through. When I started this diet, I didn't know there was such thing as a carnivore community. I was working a previous job in social media 5 years ago, and I got off of social media. Once I got that out of my life, I was like, I want to get out. I want to get away from all of this. I want to get away from blue screens, all of this. But this journey that I've found myself on has actually brought me back into social media, which is actually kind of like how we found each other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I know I've kind of been going off a little bit and I could keep talking and
No,
talking.
I
So
didn't know.
if you have any questions or if there's anything that you kind of want to touch on that I just went through just to kind of like bring it back, and then we could definitely keep going forward if that works with you.
So you were talking about autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
Do you think there are some people who even say that autoimmune diseases do not really exist or that it's a not unnatural condition? Like, what is your take in detail on autoimmune diseases?
So unfortunately, the conventional mainstream thought on this is that your autoimmune disease is a familial disposition that you cannot get away from. So
Right.
if it runs in your family, expect for you to get it.
Yes.
Which to me is the biggest cop out, because what that's doing is that's telling people, hey, you have an
You're
illness.
helpless.
It's just the way it is. You know, you're just gonna have to. You're just gonna have to do what you're supposed to do.
It's like saying you are a miserable piece of shit and that's it.
Yeah, you've got psoriasis. Well, let's start off with this cream, this steroid cream. Oh, that's not working. Okay, let's do the UV rays. Oh, that's not working. Okay, now let's contact your insurance company so I can get you on an injection that you need to take 4 times a year that they charge $15,000 for each injection.
Oh, right. Cool.
Right? Why would anybody that's not you want you to stop taking that expensive injection? It's cash flow. And if doctors told you, hey, the reason why you're in this situation is because what you decide to put here, what you decide to drink, what you decide to eat, people aren't going to be able to take that personal responsibility and say, you're telling me this is my fault? It is. But it's not. It is your fault, but it's not your fault because you're ignorant. You didn't know any better.
Yeah,
true. And there are situations like on social media where all this amazing information is put in front of you. And because people don't want to question what they know, they turn their eye on it. They'll say, you're crazy. They'll say, yeah, you're going to die of a heart attack, which people have said to me. My doctors said that to me.
Yes. I read it just before, a couple hours before we started the conversation. I checked your profile again. I think I saw that post from a couple of weeks ago, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where it said, he said 2 years ago, my doctor said, you're going to be dead in 2 years if you just rely on meat. And here I am in the healthiest condition I've ever been.
Here I am. I mean,
I know, bam, heart attack, gone. No, kidding, but.
If you go to the first picture in my profile where there's a picture of me on my honeymoon, and then there's a picture of me 4 years later, I'm the exact same weight in those photos. The exact same weight. But one, you could clearly tell that I'm optimally healthy. And the other, I was stuck in the SAD diet. And if you don't know what the SAD diet is, the standard American diet, where everything is ultra processed, everything is convenient. You're not paying attention to what's in it. And that allows you to store visceral fat, which Ironically, in the beginning of the year when I had my appendicitis, I had to get my appendix out. They had to go into my abdomen like laparoscopically to be able to remove it. And when I asked the surgeon afterwards, I was like, "So what does my visceral fat looks like?" He goes, "You basically like don't have any," which in my mind is a wonderful thing because that means my
Is it
body
good?
is.
Is it good not to have any visceral fat?
I believe, I'm not going to say I don't have any, because at the end of the day, the body is going to put there what it's supposed to have. But my body doesn't have an over excess storage of to where it's like, okay, let me put it here. Because one of the first things that happens is if your liver can't process fructose, it likes to store it as visceral fat. So if you're over consuming fruit, meaning you're going above your caloric consumption of what it should be, it's very easy for you to start storing fat when you normally wouldn't. And that comes back to our hunter-gatherer way. If fruit is available and we're following, the mammoths across the plain or whatever animal it may be, and we don't know when we're going to catch up to them or when we're going to be able to actually eat, being able to eat as much as you can, to store as much as you can, that's a survival tactic that our body utilizes. But if we're in a society where we're eating 3 times a day or 4, 5, 6 times a day, depending on the people, you start to see immediately how we start to run into all these different problems.
Oh yeah.
Because we're consuming in a way that our body is not supposed to.
No.
I truly believe that we're supposed to eat once a day, but that doesn't mean it needs to
Yeah.
be in one seating. I like to eat in an eating window. So like typically this morning I actually had a pound of hamburger before I came on the show. But normally I actually won't eat until about 12, 1 o'clock, and I'll stop my eating at 5:30.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on a carnivore diet and you also include a fair amount of fat, you're gonna be able, if your body adapted to fat burning, you are gonna be able to last on ketones a fair amount of time, and your blood glucose is gonna be very consistent and constant, and you're not gonna have those blood glucose spikes and insulin spikes, and that's why you have constant energy, metabolism, let's say, and levels, and you're not gonna crave anything. You're gonna be stable, and also what's gonna probably happen to your cortisol, I'm not sure, you can correct me on that if that's wrong, your cortisol is probably also gonna be more constant.
Yeah, no, when you're in that glucose roller coaster, cortisol and insulin releases and your dietary habits, they go hand in hand. And once you start going into things further, when you eat grains throws off all your hunger hormones, your ghrelin, leptin, everything. So
Yeah.
your body, even though your body could be saying to itself, I'm not hungry, because of the way everything else is going, nutrient wise, and you're being so dependent on running on gasoline versus diesel, you're going to find yourself craving that food again. And what's really interesting is when people make the switch to carnivore, and this happened to me included, and let me backtrack and kind of like give a little bit of history for me.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
once I left my previous job and I was off social media, I was not on it. I would post, just for like familial things between my friends, like my wife's birthday, things like that. But I wasn't on social media as entertainment. And hold on, I'm sorry. I kind of just lost my track.
No, it's all right.
So when I finally was getting to a point where I was actually starting to make this change, at this point, and this is a little bit more about me. At this point, my son was born. My daughter was a few months away from being a part of this planet and
Yeah.
joining our family.
Yeah.
And my wife's family they're very healthy and they have a pretty good insight, and they like especially my mother-in-law. She loves to ask questions,
That's
and
good. That's a good
it's
trait.
good. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good, and
She's
it's because she
open-minded to
cares.
a certain extent in comparison to other people. That's good performance.
Oh, absolutely. I'm telling you, like when people get married, they roll the dice. They roll the dice to see what their in-laws are going to be like. I got very, very, very lucky. The most wonderful, sweetest, down-to-earth, humble people I've ever met in my entire life. They're just good souls. And every single time I would be speaking to her. Speaking of the devil, she actually just showed up. But every single time I would speak to her, she would ask me questions about my diet and about my injections and these different things like that. And she would always talk about potentially doing something natural. But for me, it was kind of very fearful, because at that time I was on Stelara, which I was on for about a decade, which I
What is
haven't
the
taken.
Lara?
So Stelara is a immunosuppressant drug. So if you're somebody that is having autoimmune issues because your body is literally attacking itself, it will actually tell your immune system, "Hey, chill out." But it's not about chilling out for that specific thing. It's like, "Hey, chill out for everything."
Yeah, I
So
see.
like if I used to get a cold, there was no like getting like a light cold. I would get sick.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the progression. I would get sick a lot throughout the year. So when it was coming time for this last injection, and she would ask me about it and say, well, why don't you try coming off of it? And I told her, I was like, because in my family, my grandmother had lupus, my aunt has Crohn's, my brother had ulcerative colitis. So you could see in my family, my familial predisposition, there's a whole laundry list of these autoimmune
sorry,
issues.
man, you're screwed.
Right? You'd think that, right? You'd think
You
I'd
need
be
to
screwed.
accept a miserable, resentful existence.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm waiting. It's like the average American. The way that it's kind of like initiation into that next spot, if that makes sense. It's like, okay,
Hey man,
you're American.
why are you healthy? Why are you proving the system wrong? Why are you not sitting there being very sick?
Because it gets to a point where you wake up. I mean, it's the craziest thing. If you're an American, it's like this is the way it goes. First you get your cholesterol medication, then you get your
Cholesterol medication.
then you get your blood pressure medication, right? And then after your blood pressure medication, you start to get into your diabetic medication, and it's like that's the average steps that the American goes through, which blows my mind. I mean, you go to an old person home, it's like, oh well, who's taking more Tic Tacs today? It's like it's insanity. So
Oh yeah, I agree.
so when you look at all these other things that run in my family, and I'm on a drug that suppresses your immune system, which would stop all these things from happening.
Not so good.
But in my mind, I was like, this is stopping all these bad things from happening. But
I mean,
what I didn't
keep talking.
No, go ahead.
So the thing is, if you take very severe immunosuppressants, I mean, you always have cancer cells in your body as far as we know. You don't want them to overgrow as far as I'm concerned. So
absolutely.
You also always have like bacteria, fungus, viruses in your body. You're exposed to a lot of external influences all the time. So yeah, you want to have a regulated and healthy immune system, and you want to have a fair leukocyte count. But I mean, yeah, you want to have it functioning. You don't want to be overreactive, but not also underreactive or asleep,
Exactly. And that's the situation, is because the moment you start taking these, and now they have them in pill forms. And what's crazy is they have them on TV. Like here, one of my favorite ones is like, take, what was it? Ritsivi, or all these weird
Good
names.
evening, America. We have a new medication.
A new drug. And I'm going to make sure every single person on here has the fakest smile, pretending to have doing the happiest activities and all these things. Because it's like, hey, you're miserable. Look how happy these people are. Don't you want to be like them? It's like when you go into the grocery store and you go to the health food aisle, and it's like the most beautiful colored packages. Like, hey, come read me. Hey, you don't think this is healthy? Look, I wrote healthy right here on the package, so you know for a fact it's healthy. It's low fat, healthy, good for your heart. Like, I think Cheerios still has heart healthy on their box. Like, isn't that the craziest thing? So it's like when you start looking at all these different
it's
things,
comical, bro. It's comical.
Yeah, the more something in this planet wants to attract you, the unhealthier it realistically is, unless it's a fruit.
As of now, yeah. Fruit Loops for children.
All right. You know what should be Fruit Loops for children? Get a banana. Cut some pieces of banana, cut some different fruits and give them a fruit salad. That's probably the health. That is what I call Fruit Loops. I mean, it's just insane. But so going back to where I was, so my wife was pregnant at this point. She went to this acupuncturist in Fort Lauderdale, Soul Acupuncture. His name is Eduardo. And she went to him more for different things that was happening with the pregnancy. But after she spoke with him, she told him, what my situation was. He said, no, come in. I want to have a talk with him. So I went in with him and we had a talk. And I told him what my issues were, that I've been battling with anxiety and depression and, IBS, which if nobody knows what IBS is and hasn't dealt with it, you are such a lucky person, because when you feel like you're about to have an emergency accident and you need to go to the bathroom and you're like, go, and then you finally get there and it's like nothing's happening. It's an awful way to live your life. It's like you're trying to balance getting crap done while, excuse my French, but then also having to deal with crap that isn't actually crap, and it's just stopping everything from happening. And it's like,
makes you anxious.
It's debilitating. Yeah. And then when you have other things like anxiety, and I mean, it all starts to play on itself.
It's a vicious circle. It continuously keeps piling up.
It does. And it's exhausting. So when he finally told me, like, I could cure all of this, but you have to change your diet. I said, well, what do I have to do? He says, you have to eat meat.
Oh,
And
I
I'm like,
didn't expect that. I
yeah,
expected you to tell me something that your doctor is some crazy brainwashed dude who was giving you brainless advice. But I'm positively surprised.
yeah, no, I mean, literally when he did that, I was like, say that again, please. What did you say? And he said, you just got to eat meat. I was like, so what kind of meat? He's like, if it moves, eat it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, eat when you're hungry. Don't eat when you're not hungry. And I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty simple.
When was that? Couple years ago?
This was a little over 2 years ago. And at this time, I didn't know there was such thing as carnivore. I didn't know there was a carnivore community. I didn't know, Saladino existed or Dr. Baker or Anthony Chaffee
Yeah.
or, Saladino. I didn't know that any of these people existed because I wasn't on social media. So, I mean, I was going through a phase of basically myself, because in Florida, unless you are a nutritionist or a certified dietitian, you cannot tell somebody how to eat. So you can kind of like guide them and give them some insight in how other people do it. But you cannot say, hey, Vincent, for the next 30 days, you're going to eat 2 to 3 pounds of meat a day. You should have your first pound of meat at this time. You can't do that. Now, in other states, you can. Like in Colorado, I could prescribe you an entire diet, but here I can't. So with that being said, and with him being an Eastern doctor, he's also dancing on that line to where he cannot tell you exactly how to eat, but he can help you figure out how to eat. So at that point, he's like, yeah, eat, meat, eat fat, have no problem. So like my first thing is, let me go try this Texas Wagyu, which like, no, I didn't know anything about fat. I didn't know what fat, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I actually had a huge learning curve where I was about 2 days into the diet. I just made racks of lamb for dinner, and I ate. I ate what I normally ate. I ate a rack, which is about a pound, and all the fat and everything. But at that point, I didn't even like fat. I was more about the protein. And I was holding my son, and I was going to, and I needed to I was putting him down for bed, and I said, sweetie, I need you to take him out of my arms. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, just take him. And I thought I was going to drop him because I didn't have any energy. And what I didn't realize at that point was I wasn't consuming enough fat. And remember, I was lying at this point because with psoriasis, there's so many different triggers: shellfish, vegetables, grains. I mean, it could be anything: dairy, nuts, legumes. I mean, anything could be a trigger when it comes to skin, because when you have issues with your skin, it's saying there's something wrong with your gut. And if you start looking at all these different things, they have different defense chemicals that affect your gut. So I had to cut all of it out. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, butter, like Steak and Butter Girl, like how she eats a stick of butter. I wish I would have been able to do that back then, but I couldn't. So I had to start figuring out how much protein I needed to consume, how much fat I needed to consume. Meanwhile, I'm sorry, there's one thing I forgot to tell you. So at this point, when I was on Stelara, before I would go to get my shot, I would start having signs of my psoriasis coming back. So
right before you took the shot, okay?
Like right before. So like a week going into it, I would start to see some redness.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so when I actually first started this diet, and that just shows you how mad my body was, where even with this immunosuppressant, when it came time to recharge it, my body was like, but you're doing something wrong here. Like, stop eating this. You're making me sick. So I'm sorry. I got excited and I distracted myself. I do it all the time. Man. So yeah, it was a pretty interesting learning curve. And at that point, I was doing calisthenics, 30 minutes a day. I was an avid exerciser. But that was another thing that I learned, is when you change your diet and your body is adapting to how it burns, you can't work out the same way you used to. Like, there's two different types of workout styles. There's aerobic working out, which is full oxygen, where, like if you were to drop down and do and I said, go do 20 push-ups, depending on how active you are, you could probably get to 10 push-ups and have a constant breathing. But then your body starts to work a little bit harder. And that's when you start realizing you're holding your breath more. You're starting to push more. And the moment you go to that, you switch from aerobic working out to anaerobic.
Yeah.
And anaerobic, that means lack of oxygen. So your body is now burning glucose. Now, if you're not bringing in glucose and your body is not fat adapted, what's going to happen? Your body needs it. And what's the quickest way for your body to produce glucose? It's going to break down your muscle. So I found myself where I was working out, over exercising, which honestly, it's chronic exercising. You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, well, the muscle, yeah, you got it. Just to point out, how long does it take for the body to liquefy muscle into glucose or convert muscle into glucose?
So I have not educated myself to tell you specifically how fast
Yeah, it's all right.
your body could be able to transfer the amino acids in your muscles into proteins. But what I do understand from the different podcasts that I've listened to in the past, that is the easiest source for your body to be able to create that glucose need. And part of the reason why I can't say exactly from where, because again, when I started going through everything, I was about 3 months in, and I started 154 pounds when I started this diet. I dropped down to 138 pounds.
138 pounds. How
138
tall? How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot, but I have a narrow frame.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just nothing but skin and bones. And at that point, that's when I started to build myself up. Part of the reason why I got there was I wasn't exercising correctly. I wasn't doing my diet correctly. And my body never had the chance to be able to adapt to all of that correctly. Because if you're constantly stressing your body out, I mean, like you see it all the time. If you overstress your bicep every day working that out, what do you think's eventually going to happen? You're going to tear your bicep. If you don't allow
You're not going to be able to work out again for a fair amount of time.
Yeah. And especially if you don't stop it, we'll get to a point where your body, like you need to balance your stress and your rest, which is where a lot of people don't, because we've been just like in the 1960s where we started to fear fat and animal foods. That's also where the worst concept of exercise was invented, which was called chronic exercising. No pain, no game, pushing yourself to the limits. When in reality, like, yeah, that's great every once in a while. Let's think ancestrally. There are times where you're going to have to run for your life, but you're not running for your life every day.
Not every second.
And can you imagine what would happen to your body if you were going through that?
Yeah, a lot of stress, a lot of inflammation, and a lot of chronic damage.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you can't be optimal. And I mean, fortunately today, everybody could survive. Everybody, no matter what you're born with, is able to procreate. But you go back a few thousand years and you decided to work yourself out like that, when danger was really there, you weren't actually prepared for it because you were too tired.
Yeah, you would get consumed by some lion. Sable, how do you say saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that we have to remember is today things are a lot toned down to how vicious things were back then. I mean, I think if we put ourselves in a time capsule and went back 2,000 years, you'd be blown away at how rigid our ancestors were. Took nothing. I mean, we were animals. I mean, that's the truth. Civilization wasn't created until about 10,000 years ago. That's a blink in retrospect to our time here evolving on this earth.
Yes. But I think like what some people are probably struggling with nowadays, people who live in very high class societies, the fact that we have a biological, physiological system that declares us as animals. And that's why we are still animals. We have insulin, we have glucose, we have fight and flight response, we have an adrenal system, so that turns us into animals. Maybe we are animals with a higher consciousness and a higher intelligence, maybe, but I think it's fair to say that we can be classified as animals. But some people would consciously completely debunk that because they would feel or create an image of themselves that they're being worthless savages. And antagonistic to that, they have a different imagination of themselves, a more noble imagination in their mind. That's why they really reject that idea.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is what makes a person a savage? Lack of information and being completely in tune with your your survival roots.
Yes.
I mean, that's why, it's uncivilization. And what is civilization? It's knowledge, it's information,
education.
Exactly.
Selfless spirit.
Yeah, because I mean, we have to remember, we stopped evolving a very long time ago. I mean, do you know what the two things are that are needed for animals to evolve?
Well, I mean, you probably need pressure, and
that's right,
adaptive pressure, and you need.
But what are the two pressures? The two real pressures. When you start looking at this world for what it really is to survive, what are the two real pressures we have to deal with?
In order to sustain survival.
That's right.
Well, we need to survive, and we need energy, we We need energy and we need to reproduce.
We need energy to be able to reproduce. So we need food and water. And
Yes.
the last thing we need, the last pressure is predator pressure. I mean, think about it. If there was a whole lion pride that was hunting our group, if you are the person that was able to run just a little bit faster because your quads were that much more developed, you survived. Sorry, but Sally didn't. And you got to pass on your role. And that was the difference. The person that was just a little bit faster, that was able to climb a little bit better, that was able to make faster decisions in the short term, those are the people that had what it took to be able to survive. And that's what got passed on. And then
pressure to adapt.
Literally. And then it gets to a point where we have figured out a way to gather food, to be able to plant it, grains especially. Without grains, I mean, that was everything, because that was our protein base. I mean, you start looking at the lower class systems from way back, I mean, they were eating grains. You start going to higher class, they were eating meat. I mean, that's just how it was. And if you actually look at the beginning of when we created in the advent of civilization, I mean, before, I believe it was the Bronze Age, our median age, life expectancy was like in the 30s. Like we were at a point where we were having 3 generations. We were having grandparents teach grandchildren and telling them about their stories. And that's part of like the information that allowed us to become so much better. We were able to pass off that knowledge. But going into the Bronze Age, I believe our average life expectancy was 18. Half of what it was before half of what it was before we even actually started planting and making sure we had food always available. And then, of course, with that, there was a whole plethora of issues. Now we have more people together. So what happens when you have too many animals together? Start getting diseases. Other insects like mosquitoes and things are able to start procure because now they have a bigger food source. And then you start going down the line of people consuming grains. Well, the anti-nutrients, which are, affecting your bone development, your teeth. I mean,
I wanted to ask you about anti-nutrients, but you're already on the brink of telling the audience what's going on with anti-nutrients.
Yeah, so anti-nutrients, like this is my favorite thing. It's like imagine you're sitting at a sushi conveyor belt, right? And the sushi goes by. And you really want that piece of tuna. But when you go to reach for it, something goes in your hand and you can't grab it. That's what these anti-nutrients are doing. And they're affecting your K2. I mean, they're affecting your B. It affects everything. And if you're at a point where now that's the main consumption of what you're doing, well, now you have an extreme vitamin deficiency. I bet you have vitamin D deficiency. And I mean, vitamin D this is just a quick side note. Like people villainize vitamin D. Vitamin D, if you are able to produce it optimally, you actually unlock the P52 gene, which is also known as the spell checker gene. What this gene does is when your cells replicate, it makes sure that they divide perfectly. That
healthy replication of cells. Yeah.
That's anti-cancer.
Yeah, right. Before you said it, I was thinking, that's anti-cancer. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. But if you're eating the wrong foods, it messes up your ability to produce vitamin D. It messes up your ability to absorb all these vitamins that your body needs. But
you're going to have a dysregulated immune system as well.
Everything. I mean, everything. And not even go down. If you're consuming grains, you're not consuming enough animal fats. Well, now you're not going to have an optimal cholesterol level, which affects all your hormones. And I mean, and it just goes down the line. And once your hormones get messed up and you're eating grains, that's when you're getting hungry multiple times throughout the day. And that's, again, the insulin spike, making you inflamed, weakening your immune system. And it back then, going into the Bronze Age, look at what happened. It killed so many people.
That's also why so many people are obese, because they're craving the blood glucose spikes all the time, and that releases insulin every time. Yeah. And insulin blocks energy metabolization, and that's why they store all these fats, and that's why so many people are obese. And then they also have all this fat, and then they have an increase in inflammation, and that's like this vicious cycle why so many people are morbidly obese, inflamed, and just by the end of the day sick.
Yeah. And mainly and also part of the reason why they're morbidly obese is because their ancestral genes are working so well. They're saying, hey, that's delicious. I could store this. Eat it. Keep eating it. But they've never really been in a situation to where they've actually needed to utilize that stored energy.
Yeah, that primitive evolutionary system hasn't realized that yet. If you consume all these calories, it's too much focused on survival, but it hasn't realized that 30 years later, you're going to be very sick. And it's like while you're on the way getting a heart attack, or some autoimmune disease, you already feeling physically very, let's say, very weak. You don't feel healthy, but it just doesn't realize that in 30 years, you might die, or you're going to be very sick, and you have almost an irreversible disease. And that's probably also because people back then didn't live long enough, so the system could realize which kind of inflammation and damage it would cause to the system, that there was no adaptation to the system we experience and face nowadays.
Exactly. I mean, once your body started this, I mean, that was it. There was no medication to help you. I mean, we had some plant herbs, to do different things. And one of the best documented cases we have of this, actually, in an ancient civilization, believe it or not, is ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt is actually one of the ancient civilizations where we know they actually produced their own seed oils. They consumed a heavy component of their diet were grains. So when you look at ancient Egypt, right, and they were consuming seed oils, they were consuming all of these grains, and then you start looking at their documentation, obesity, heart disease, all these similar issues that we deal with today. But then you look at other civilizations, like the ancient Greek civilizations that did not have that. I mean, obviously there was always some order of that disease around because of how people were, what the consumption was. Like if you were a peasant and you didn't have money, you were eating bread. You were fighting for bread. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but like you're going to have issues. But
we have time. No worries.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. So my mind goes really, really, really quickly. One of the things that I used to have was ADHD. I still have my ADD. So my mind will kind of like go off in these all tangents, and sometimes I'll go off, but then you'll see...
sometimes it's not that structured. It goes off the rails. Yeah.
Yes. So
that's all right.
So when you look at all of that, I mean, it's a pretty good indicator that what's causing a lot of our issues are consuming fats that we're not supposed to consume and consuming food sources in an abundance in a way that we're not supposed to. So like, I'm a strong believer of living the 80-20, and this is what I work on with my clients, where, I live the way I do my diet, I'm like 100% constant. Like, are there times where like, if I knew the French fry was fried in tallow, would I have a French fry? Maybe. I'm not going to eat my
It would be way better than seed oils.
100%. I'm a strong believer. Like, if you're somebody that can tolerate carbs and you want to engage in consuming them, do it in the healthiest way possible. Make sure it's not cooked in seed oils. Make sure it's cooked in tallow. Have healthy omega-3s. Because if it's something that isn't a major part of your diet, but something you're including every once in a while, I mean, I don't see how that's going to give you lifelong damage. So what I tell my clients is shoot for 100%. But if you end up doing 80% of the diet correctly, you are in a 1000% better situation than you were before you started this.
Yeah, right.
And what I find with people is as you start to feel good, you want to keep that feeling.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
everyone wants to be healthy and feel good. I mean,
it's the greatest feeling to feel alive, to not worry. Just to be happy.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I tell my clients is, try the best you can. If you do at least 80%, that's great. And you're going to see once you start getting into the role of things that you're going to become 100% because it becomes so easy. Or hormones become adapted. So you're now not craving sugar anymore at night. I always pronounce this one wrong. I think it's pronounced CCK. It's a digestive enzyme that's in your intestines that actually regulates how your body moves things through to digest. So if you're somebody, for example, that's consuming so many calories and so much food, your body's actually going to push it through your system faster. Because your body's like, oh, we got all these nutrients, but hey, there's more nutrients that just came, so let's push this through because we got to deal with this nutrient. And before you know it, people are like, oh, I go to the bathroom, 3 times a day. It's normal, morning, afternoon, night, or, morning and night, or whatever it may be. But when you start this diet, and for me, like he said, just eat when you're hungry. And I was like, how much should I eat? I didn't know about, grams to body weight or anything like that. So I was eating 3 pounds of beef a day, morning, lunch, and dinner. I was priming. I didn't know that that's what it was, but I was priming. It got to a point where I would call Eduardo and I'd be like, what's going on? I've been eating 3 pounds of meat for the last 3 days and I have not gone to the bathroom. Because like when you're somebody who thinks you should be going to the bathroom, But now you haven't gone in 3 days, but you have 9 pounds of meat in your body.
Yeah, your body needs to adapt.
How about this? I would jump on the scale and my body wouldn't gain weight. I'm like, I have 9 pounds. I consumed it. Nothing's come out. Why haven't? And what I realized is my body was starving of so many important nutrients that was in this red meat that the CCK slowed down my digestion to allow me to get the maximum absorption. And you start realizing that your bowel movements change. You start going less and less. And what I find is if there's a day where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to eat a little bit more because I'm around it, I actually find that meat, because I consumed more, my body's like, oh, I have more nutrients than I need. Okay, let's get rid of what we don't need because I have more coming down the pipeline, if that makes sense. So it's a lot that goes on when people go through this change, because you don't really know how your body is going to react. You see all these firsthand accounts of these other people, but you don't know how your body specifically is going to react. And when things are happening, like, you can't just reach out to people. So coming back to where I was with Eduardo, and I was about 3 months in, and I was telling him, you know, I'm trying to work out. I'm not really gaining muscle mass. I decided, and at that point I was having like a fruit before I would work out, because I was thinking there was something going on, and I didn't understand what any of this was. So finally he said to me, well, have you heard of this guy, Paul Saladino? And I was like, no. He's like, well, you should give him a listen. And I said, what is he? He's like, well,
you have a very interesting doctor. I need to say that.
Yeah.
I need to praise that again. And the knowledge that, like, that rarely happens, that you have a doctor like that who's that alternative. Like, that's very impressive.
He's amazing. He studied with monks in Thailand. Like, he's a very, very interesting
That
man.
sounds cool.
Yeah, so he's awake. Like, he sees the world for what it seems like. I don't want to get into that because, you know, people start going off, but his eyes are open to the world. So he basically told me, you know, Paul Saladino is one of the carnivores who also does fruit and honey. You should check him out. So at that point, this is when, now I'm carnivore. My doctor is telling me that what I'm doing isn't healthy. It's going to kill me. At this point, I'm getting a blood test done almost every 30 days because I wanted to make sure that markers and things weren't wrong. And I didn't even know what to look for. I had no idea what to look for, other than like, let's just look at my liver. Let's look at my thyroid. You know, let's do a lipid panel. Like, let's look at that. So when Eduardo finally linked me up with Paul Saladino and his podcast, at this point, I still didn't know Anthony Chaffee or any of these other people. This was just like somebody that seems like he's going in the same direction as you. Here's information. So when I looked up his podcast, I went way back to podcast number 1 and started going through, because I wanted to understand why he went carnivore and what was it through his experience that made him shift to adding in fruit and honey. Because I'm not a doctor. Like, I have a background in psychology. I have a bachelor's degree, and I went through my education, but I did not go through residency. I did not go deeper into all this. So I needed somebody that I felt like I could truly trust with their insight, because, you know, they're a free thinking doctor, which is what I believe doctors are supposed to be. Doctors are supposed to get information, and they're supposed to figure out and try and come up with ways to make things better, to come up with a better treatment course for their patients. Not just what it's turned into today, where it's like, okay, well, this lab result tells me that you should be on a statin because this is what the computer's pulling you up at. And it's like, doctors aren't being doctors. So my doctor told me, she's like, listen, your cholesterol, you know, you're in the fids. And at this point, like, my liver was still, I was having issues with where it was showing like fatty liver deposits, but it was more so that I was over consuming protein and not enough fat, which was something that Paul Saladino's podcast helped me understand, because once I got that ratio right, I think I was doing like very lean meats. Like, I wasn't really consuming enough fat. So once I was able to get that information, my liver normalized, because it wasn't overworking trying to, you know, create glucose and all these other processes through gluconeogenesis. Because if you consume too much protein, your body's like, okay, we don't need any more protein. Let's convert it into glucose.
Yes.
Through gluconeogenesis. And then that's where you can get that's exactly how people who are on a carnivore diet, that's how they replace their glycogen. Their body takes the excess protein, converts it into glycogen, and that's where it gets stored in your liver, your muscles, for you to be able to use later on when you need to do some type of anabolic exercise. Or really, what it's really for is fight or flight. It's there for when it's time for you to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, so it's also very ludicrous to claim that you're going to have glucose deficiency when you just eat meat. Recently, I saw a reel on Instagram. There was some dude on a podcast saying, when you just eat meat, you're on a glucose deficiency. And there was a podcaster with Anthony Shafee, and both of them were like, what the fuck are you talking about? That is scientifically not true, man. Like you're not gonna lack glucose when you eat meat. You have so many proteins. You're good, man.
But if you're at the point where you're not fat adapted, like, yes, I could because that's what was happening to me. I never allowed my body to be so fat adapted because I was overstressing my body out. I was over consuming protein, not enough fat, and I was working out anaerobically. So my body's like, crap, we need to keep up with this. I never put myself in a situation where my body could recover. But if you actually do it correctly and you go through primal fitness, which about learning how to be able to do things aerobically and training your body to do things aerobically, I could do almost 50 push-ups now without my breathing changing.
Wow.
Which shows me that my body has adapted to being able to do these movements without needing that glucose. And that's something you could train your body to do. And when your body is fat adapted, I mean, there was just I was just reading about a fat adapted an athlete that when they were measuring how quickly their body is able to replace glycogen stores while they're actually competing, it was in a way that nobody ever thought was possible because they were so fat and so ketone adapted that their body.
So they were exclusively on a carnivore diet.
Yeah, no, there was
with
this one guy.
High fat ratio.
Yeah, there was this one guy. I could try and look him up, but he was an ultra marathon runner, and I believe he did like a 5-day marathon without any food, just water and salt, to show when you're fat adapted what your body could do, and all you need is electrolytes to be able to like maintain what you're trying to accomplish. And he flourished. And when you look at that, I mean, that just says it all, because people say that if you don't consume glucose, well, your glycogen stores aren't going to replenish. That's not true. So
like
if
till 5 years ago, or around 6 years ago, I also thought that you need carbohydrates like grains, pasta, oatmeal to sustain energy. But I mean, I've been eating a lot of meat in the last 3 years. And I also had gut issues for a while. And I've been eating a lot of meat for a while. And I can tell you, I'm still alive. And I think I did not lose weight, or at least not a significant amount of weight. So you can definitely sustain on just meat. I mean, yeah, as you said, I never ate lean meat. When I started eating carnivore around 3 years ago, I started eating fat straight away, fatty meats. And if I ate or consumed lean meats, my body signaled me, I don't like that. I don't like lean meat. I like fatty meat, fatty pork, fatty beef. I like that. It needs to have a certain amount of fat, because if it's just protein, it's going to be very boring for my system. My brain is going to resist to the consumption of that particular meat.
Yeah. And then going off of what you just said, it just reminded me from when I was talking about that time when I passed my son off to my wife. But I went over to that lamb chop and I devoured that next rack faster. Like, I was ravenous. I felt like an animal. Just like after I was done, it was almost like I blacked out. But what I realized is I went straight for the fat, and that's what and that was the most delicious part. And from that point forward, that's when my body realized all of the benefits and all the key nutrients that are in fat that your body needs. And since then, I mean, I want the fat first, but growing up, picky eater, I mean, I wanted the fat cut off of my plate away. I didn't even want it on my plate. I was like, here, Dad, take my fat. That's yucky. You know, look at the way it looks. It's chewy. I mean, I recently just purchased a cow from Jake Steaks, Betsy. I don't know if you've seen her on my profile, but I've been posting some pictures of her, and she's from a true regenerative farm for over 35 years. And I'm telling you, if you tasted the fat, I mean, it is like grassy and almost like fish. And I don't want to say fishy because that's not the best way to explain it, but it's just like,
now that would give the impression that it's disgusting. People would get that wrong, I suppose.
But it's not disgusting. Like, when you first take that bite, it's almost like, wait a second, like, what does that taste? And then when you start chewing it, it starts melting in your mouth and you start understanding the flavor. You're like, oh my God, this is like the most amazing fat that I've ever consumed in my entire life. Like, you understand the process of how cows create their meat, right?
How cows create? You mean how cows grow muscles?
Yeah, like what they're at, like how, like what their source is for how they basically build their muscles and their fat.
I mean, I suppose they eat their ruminant animals, so
yes.
they eat grass, I suppose.
So what if I told you the grass isn't actually their food? It is, but it isn't.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be kind of interesting? Like, wouldn't that kind of spark your attention there for a second? Like, okay, what are you getting at?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort that out.
So I don't know if you're familiar with sourdough. Are you familiar with sourdough at all?
I mean, I don't know much about
So
sourdough, but I heard about it.
So sourdough, basically you're taking lactobacillus, you're harnessing it from the air, and that goes into the jar, gets into that dough, and it eats it, consumes, and you watch the dough go from this high, it'll come all the way up as it's repopulating and eating, and then once the source starts to come down, they start to die down and it all drops back down. That's kind of exactly how it works in a cow's stomach.
Okay.
A cow has bacteria in their stomach.
Mm.
They consume the grass, and the grass ferments in their stomach. So they're not actually making all of their muscle and their fat from the grass. They actually convert all of the bacteria, like just like in that sourdough starter, that suddenly gets all this food. They're like, oh crap, let's replicate. Let's create so many of us because there's so much food. Well,
it's like the grass initiates a fermentation process.
Yep.
Okay.
And then they convert all of that bacteria that they grew. That's what gets turned into their meat muscle and their fat, which is why the grass matters, because the more nutrients that's in the soil, the more nutrients that's in the grass, and that gives even more nutrients for that bacteria to grow. So let's say on one grass, the bacteria would only grow, let's say, a half a cup. Well, when you get into that really amazing regenerative grass, well, now the bacteria is growing up the whole cup. So now that cow has even more nutrient dense bacteria to be able to process, to be able to convert into meat. And that's where you start seeing like the omegas and everything that's available in the fat, and as well as the protein. It all comes down to what nutrients is actually in the food source for that bacteria, to how much can that bacteria basically replicate itself for the cow to be able to digest.
The bacteria probably produces fatty acids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how they can produce muscle.
Yeah. So Betsy, I got her from a over 35 year regenerative farm, which, I mean, I'm waiting to visit. I've seen pictures, but when you look at the soil of these farms, like the color, it's like a rich chocolate. It's like dirt you haven't seen anywhere before, because it's just
nutrient dense, probably.
Yeah. And when you start getting into that, I mean, everything that comes around, I mean, your food source, I mean, everything, the way that your body adapts to the fat, the way your body utilizes the fat. I mean, I'm not going to say if you're going to only eat grain finished cows, you're going to be, at the end of the day, just eating meat and eating fat is better than anything else.
Yeah.
But as you start going down the roller coaster, as you start going down the wormhole and you start looking about what you want to put in your body, because if we're in this road, I mean, at this point, we're very self-aware and we want to make ourselves the most optimal version. And the best way to do that is your fuel source. So for me, I mean, I just got I got Betsy from a regenerative farm, and I actually have a picture of her on my freezer, because yeah, I do.
Did you buy the cow after it was slaughtered, or did you buy it when it was alive and then you slaughtered it yourself?
I actually picked her out of all the animals, which was an extremely sad experience for me.
Yeah.
And people are going to look at me and say, well, why would you do that? Why would you want to see the animal that you're going to eat? Like, that's disgusting. Yeah. But the reality is again, going back into our ancestral mindset, if we were hunting for our tribe, for our family, and we shot that animal with an arrow, I mean, are we happy that we have food? Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're walking over to that animal and you see that animal feeling what it's feeling, it's sad.
Of course.
I mean, it's very sad to know that, you know, this animal is feeling pain and is about to lose its life, and you know you're taking its life because you need to nourish yourself. It's extremely sad. And for people who think it's not sad, I'm sorry, but like, you need to get something checked out here, because any loss of life is sad, even if it's for survival.
If you don't perceive it as sad, you're not in love with life, and you don't understand the value of existence and consciousness.
And you don't appreciate the food you're actually eating.
Yes.
I think if most people in this planet had to be connected with where their food is actually coming from, instead of just going to the grocery store, picking out their ribeye and their skirt steak and their chicken, and they put it in their fridge, and God forbid they forget to cook it. They're like, oh, it went bad, I'm just going to throw it out.
So it's kind of also like a religious practice to appreciate the sacrifice the animal gave, so you can A, survive, and B, survive healthily, sustainably.
Yeah.
As we're talking about healthy, fatty beef right now.
Yeah, it's very spiritual.
Yeah, actually it is.
And when you have that appreciation for your food, you're not wasting it. Like this
No.
animal gave its life for me. I have all of its bones that are able to be used, all of its organs, I mean everything. And I'm not going to waste any part of this animal.
No, you should not. No.
And this is what's going to keep me, I mean, and my family nourished for the next year. I mean, anybody says whatever they want. I mean, I have the smallest footprint on this planet in regards to the way that I eat. The farm is carbon negative, capturing more carbon in.
I was about to get into that topic, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about being a responsible human for this planet. I mean, yeah.
So last time I had Phil Escott on, he's friends with Anthony Shafee. And I mean, he used to be sick for a long time and he got into a carnivore diet. And over, let's say, 10 years, over the course of 10 years, he started to optimize his carnivore diet. And now he's 63. He's absolutely healthy. And he used to be in agony. He used to be de-energized. He had autoimmune diseases. And he also said, like, as a carnivore, you are more vegetarian than a vegetarian, because a vegetarian, you're eating grains, you're eating vegetables, you're eating fruits. So probably many people who are very ideological and hostile about that topic and have a very bad reputation in their minds about carnivore people and are projecting a lot of anger and hatred onto those people and declare themselves as morally superior. They have a lack of education, because if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you are involved in murderous contribution of killing more animals than a carnivore. Carnivore is way more sustainable because if it comes from the right source, you have a lot of nutrients, you have a lot of protein and a lot of good fat. So you're going to be well nourished for a low amount of sacrifice. If you eat grains all the time, we talked about this on this podcast, you're going to have a lot of glucose spikes, and you need way more food, to put it briefly. And a lot of more animals will die because they need to kill the insects, the rabbits, and all those animals which are around. Many people, this is really important. I'm not making this up, and you're probably going to confirm this, because many people don't realize that they are unfortunately uneducated on that topic, and they just follow uneducated, very dangerous ideology.
It absolutely is. I recently went on a trip to Grenada, which one thing I love about this island is how regeneratively they farm. And it's amazing because, like, this farm that I went to, there was a cocoa plant here. Then there was a soursop tree. Then there was rosemary. And I mean, it was all intermixed, mango. I mean, everything that you could imagine. And I looked at my wife and I said, this is incredible. I go, I'm going to ask this question, but they don't use a single pesticide because they don't need to.
No,
and when I asked the question, I go, no, we don't use pesticides. And this lady in the group asked me, well, why would you ask if they use pesticides? And I said, because unlike most people, and I said, please don't look at me a little weird, but I am very hyper aware of this planet and how we decide to nourish ourselves from it. We're destroying the earth the way that we do it.
Yeah, we do.
And the reality is in this farm, if we had 50 of these cocoa trees right next to each other, we would need to spray pesticides, because whatever bug eats from that plant, from that tree, whatever it is that they get their substance from, there's a lot of it. Like if you're a person and you're a hunter-gatherer, right? And you're walking with your family and you suddenly come across the Green Valley where there's all these tubers and all these animals and everything that you could ever imagine, any type of food, whatever your diet is. What do you think's going to happen? You're going to stay there and you're going to procreate and you're going to procreate and you're going to procreate until there's a point where you start to have food pressures and other situations, because like everything else, we'll always over procreate and it'll basically destroy our resources, which is why we kind of like moved around until we come up with the way we do agriculture now. But to go a step further about the loss of life when it comes to monocrop agriculture, let's just talk about the amount of carbon that's released into the atmosphere every year when they have to till the soil. It's not nutrient dense. They have to till the soil. They need to bring up more soil. They need to synthetically fertilize it. And what happens when it rains? Well, now you have topsoil running off. What happens when there's bugs? Well, we need to kill every single bug. Well, what else is going to go in there? Any bird, anything that goes into these fields, I say murdered, because when I kill a cow, it's for a purpose and it's for nourishment. This is loss of life that does not have meaning. It is out of sight, out of mind. We need to create all these vegetables because we've sold people that it is the healthiest thing that you could do for yourself, and that you yourself aren't killing anything, that you are this easing person, right? But that's not the truth. And I've gotten into so many vegans that have come onto my space that have tried to argue with me. And they're like, you're a mass murderer. I go, how am I a mass murderer? She's like, do you not see what the cattle industry is like? I go, I don't support the cattle industry. If there's a cow that goes to a grain finished lot, I'm not buying it. I'm not going to vote my dollars towards that. I go,
Yeah.
me?
You're not going to support them financially.
No, absolutely not. I vote with my dollars.
Yeah.
And we all can vote with our dollars. And
Yeah.
when somebody's like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm just going to buy this because it's convenient. You just voted for more of that because people are going to supply to the cash cycle. And this is the part that blows my mind even more is we think about agriculture in America and we think about it for solely feeding people. Such a significant portion of our agriculture in America for corn and soy is for the purpose to feed animals.
Yes.
We're feeding them something that they're not even ancestrally supposed to consume.
Yes.
And when you look at the process to create all of that, I mean, we are destroying this planet to give animals something that they're not even supposed to eat so we can make them fatter and make more money off of them without actually having the real nutrient density that it's supposed to have.
Yeah, destroy Brazilian forests, for example.
It's all about dollars. And that's the other thing that blows my mind is people say with the deforestation that you just said in the Amazon rainforest, and they show pictures of them putting cattle on that land. No. They put the cattle on that land to finish the land because they want to grow corn and soy. And that's what they're trying to do. And China is actually trying to get away from their soy. They're trying to change where they source things from because they don't want to rely so much on America. That's been going on now for the last 10 years. And I don't want to get too much into the politics of everything with whatnot, but there's just so much going on with the wrong mindset. And we've created a story for people to believe in this make-believe situation.
Matrix.
It's just not real. Like if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegetarian and you don't want to eat meat for whatever reason it may be, that's fine. But don't start yelling at people because they don't have the same mindset as you. Because the reality is they did a scan where they measured people's brainwaves on a subconscious level. So this vegan would be like, oh, no, I'm not. I believe this was on one of Saladino's podcasts where the vegan was like, no, I can't stand meat. Like it's horrible, whatever it was. But when they put him up to these senses and they took that fight and they were consciously telling themselves it was the most disgusting thing they had eaten, well, guess what? Yeah. The brainwaves said something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Which shows part of where you went to before with people on how, we're animals with intelligence. It's that intelligence that allows us to be able to create these situations. And then it takes enough of us to tell enough lies, because as we've known, if you tell a lie enough times, what happens to that lie?
It's a truth.
It becomes the truth.
Or reality. Yeah. Or paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perception. Like this was my favorite thing. One of my favorite things I used to love to do is Google. I would tell my friends, and Google changed recently, so I think they might have updated something, because when you search online, it's not actually giving you the reality, it's giving you the perception of the reality we're living in. So I would say go on Google and search, does butter contain magnesium? As we know, magnesium is one of the harder things to be able to come across in nature. And it's something that we depend on. As is a ancestral source, we would get magnesium solely from spring water and other like natural sources like that. But as society's gone away, we really don't have that utilization of magnesium. And most people are magnesium deficient. But when you look at butter and you Google, does butter have magnesium? It says no. But then if you Google, does raw butter have magnesium? And the answer would be yes. Because the moment you start pasteurizing, the moment you start doing these other techniques to something that's there, you're getting rid of all these key nutrients. So yeah, if most people are consuming pasteurized butter, then Google's correct. Butter doesn't have magnesium, but that's not the reality. That's the perception of the product we've created of what butter's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to be self-reflecting yourself and be self-critical to the core every time. Because if we don't get out of this matrix mindset, we're going to create ideologies, and ideologies are very dangerous. They are very pernicious and murderous. I start reading a book now. I don't know if you know him. Fyodor Dostoevsky, Demons. He was a writer in Russia in the 1850s, and there was a lot of turmoil going on in Russia. And he kind of describes how people turn into ideological and satanic cyborgs because of that external influence and how they lose their spirits. And I believe that's what's happening right now on the world again. And people think so the funny thing is, people are acting the way nowadays they do in order to avoid the mindset they gained by trying to avoid it,
Yeah. I mean, I like to go I like to make it a little more obvious to what it is. It's all emotional. If you can control someone's emotions, you can control that person.
Yes.
And what I love is, like, I grew up in the early 2000s when the whole, global warming thing was becoming such a big deal.
Yeah.
Because before that, they were worried that we were going through an ice age in the 1970s with the snowstorms in Buffalo. They're like, oh crap, we're going into an ice age 30 years later. The world's gonna melt. What's going on? So how did they play with people's emotions? Well, they basically utilized a current event that can't be measurable, that people would have some type of an emotional attraction to. And what was that? The Great Barrier Reef and the polar bears. So they would say, the polar bears, they don't have ice. They can't hunt for the seals. They're dying. And they would show you these sad videos of polar bears walking, all starving on the seashore because there's no ice, saying, the polar bears are going to die. And then they go to the Great Barrier Reef and they show you like this mass distance of just dead coral, saying the water's so warm that the reef is dying. So they started measuring it. And I believe it was in 2015, they came out and they said that the Great Barrier Reef has actually expanded inside.
Well,
let's go a step further. The Arctic, the ice is melting. There was a report
the poor
that was
polar
just released.
bears.
No, but this is down in the South Pole. It actually expanded this last year significantly. You start looking at the polar bears. So the polar bears, they need ice. The seals, they den in the ice to rear their pups. So if in fact global warming was an actual issue, then where are the polar bears? The polar bear population has actually been going up. And the question is well, why? Well, if you think about, and I know this is going a little bit back, but we'll kind of bring things back.
It's all right.
They hunt on the ice. And if it's as cold to where now, let's say the ice is hundreds and hundreds of miles long, think about how much this polar bear has to search looking for its seal pup or for its food, right? But now if it's warm enough to where instead of it being hundreds of miles of ice, maybe it's 10 miles of ice here, 5 miles of ice there, it gives them a smaller area to search for where these seals need to be able to bear their pups. So it's actually making it easier for them to find food sources. And if you actually look at the numbers, the polar bear population has increased. And this was a tactic that has lasted for the last 25 years, where people still talk about the Great Barrier Reef and the polar bears because there's such an emotional attachment. And once you get people's emotions involved, I mean, you could show them blindly, like if somebody emotionally believes that 2 + 2 is 5, and you can prove them in front of them that 2 + 2 is 4, if they're not emotionally prepared to accept the reality, they're not going to accept it. And that's what I find is going on in the vegan community in regards to how agriculture is going on and actually in mass population, because we're so
they're playing with
brainwashed.
people's guilty consciousness.
Exactly. They're
their compassion. Their compassion gets weaponized to follow a certain agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the agenda, unfortunately, comes back to where with everything else. If you're not eating an ancestral appropriate food, what happens? What happens when you start giving your cat grain-based foods? What happens when you start giving your dog people food? Why do they tell you can't give your dog people food, but you could eat it? Because the moment you start going away from an ancestral appropriate diet, you get sick. And the moment you get sick, what do you need? You need medication, or else you're just going to keep getting sicker. And that medication is covering up the fire. So what do? We do what we're doing here, where people like you and I, we have our own personal experiences, and we're trying to help people open their eyes to the reality. Exactly. Because if you continue to push away fats and you continue to push away real animal products and you keep eating vegetables and low-fat products that are filled with sugar and cornstarch and all these other things, you're going to get sick. You're not going to be thinking as clearly. I mean, there was a study that was done when you give a vegetarian creatine, they have better memory.
Yeah.
Where do you get creatine from? Animal foods.
Yeah, meat. It's in meat. Yeah.
So if our brains developed from eating meat, from omega-3s, and some people say this argument where, it was the omega-3s from the shellfish. I mean, whatever it is, the fact is omega-3s is what allowed our brains to build, right? And since the advent of civilization, our brains have been shrinking. What is it? I mean, we as a people, we have not been, meat's so expensive. Like the king, the Lord, only the king was able to hunt in his forest. You hunted in his forest, took an animal, you were killed.
Yeah.
Why wasn't the king eating all the same crap that everybody else was eating? Because the king would get sick. And deep down, I think everybody knew that if you had a sick population, you had a controlled population. And if they were weak,
if they were non-resilient.
And if they wanted to try and have an uprise, they couldn't because they didn't have any energy.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say is, yeah, if you also don't eat much meat, you're going to lack cholesterol. And I read a study in which I think vegetarians, I mean, they don't really consume any cholesterol. They had smaller brains. And the thing is, your brain is also made out of what you eat, of the omega-3s, the cholesterol. And if you just eat bad, pro-inflammatory fats, your brain might as well be composed of those fats. And then you cannot be functional then.
Yeah. No, you can't. And that's what kind of gets into the whole seed oil discussion. Because like at the end of the day, if you were eating some minor plants, right, and you were getting some omega-6s, like I don't think that's the end of the world, because at the end of the day, like we would be noshing on little things as we were hunting. So like those omega-6s have a certain role. But when it comes to the way that we process them, I mean, it's insane to have to put something through bleach to get rid of the smell. So we wouldn't have to, so we'd be okay with putting it in our body. I mean, you look at all these and they're so highly oxidative. I mean, heat, air, light. It's like life. And if the three factors of life makes this even more dangerous,
it's going to become more dangerous.
Like think about it. People say, "Oh, well, where does heart disease happen? You know, LDL is the bad guy, HDL is the good guy." Well, I don't think LDL is the bad guy. I think LDL,
I wanted to ask you about that as well, but
Yeah,
now you're getting into the weeds anyways.
LDL is the paramedics, is the first responders. They're your firefighters, your ambulances. They're who's showing up. They first. They bring the nutrients into your brain. They help your brain repair itself. Your HDL can't do that. Your HDL is basically what its job is it's like the policeman. Its job is to keep an eye on all the LDL, because as the LDL goes through your body, there's two different types. There's the large puffy and the small dense. And as that large puffy goes through your body and it's dropping off different key nutrients, it starts to shrink. And eventually, when it gets into your artery, like, can I ask a question? Do you know why, if LDL was the true cause for heart disease or for damage to your blood vessels, why is it that there is no other area in your body that the same process of heart disease takes in? Like, why aren't you getting calcified plaque in your vein in your elbow? Like, why is none of that showing up?
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons might be, I'm not so sure, but many people take cholesterol blockers, right?
Well,
So
yeah, but
this causes heart disease maybe, but
the real reason why the calcified plaque shows up in your arterial arteries but not in your veins is because of the pressure of your heart. There's so much pressure going on in that area, and there's so much oxygen in that area that when you have an LDL that's small, it's no longer large puffy, doesn't have its full load. Like, imagine the car has empty seats in it, and you have all this pressure that's going on. And this is how I visualize what's going to happen. Well, that LDL may become oxidized. But our body, we have a way of defending against that. We have our policemen. We have our HDLs whose job is to say, "Oh, no, not you. I don't like what you're doing. You look like you're starting to become a bad situation. We're going to take you in, bring you back to the liver. The liver is going to rehab you and create and bring you back into the cholesterol that you need to be. And then you go back into the body and you continue your source." Our body has its own natural way of being able to deal with oxidized LDL, which is what they say is the dangerous aspect, right? But when you're in a situation where you're now following the mainstream mindset, where they say, "Hey, you should not be consuming animal fats. You should not be consuming butter. You should not be consuming full fat milk. You should be consuming margarine. You should be consuming vegetable oils." I mean, I grew up with "I can't believe it's not butter." I know Chuck Norris always knew that it wasn't butter, but do you ever hear that Chuck Norris joke? Do you know who Chuck Norris is?
No, I don't think so, but you can
Chuck
tell
Norris
it.
is this guy who's like
I know Chuck Norris, but yeah.
So he's like the Texas Ranger, the guy that was like, no matter what, it was always like he was the dominator. Like, did you know Chuck Norris underneath his beard had a third fist, like in his chin, like those types of things, right?
Yeah.
It was like Chuck Norris could believe it's not butter, while everybody else couldn't believe it's not butter. So when you're starting to consume all of that, and then you start throwing in, your trans fats that you're getting from your chips and your homogenized fats, which people try and tell you is good for you, which is even worse than all the other ones, right? So you're getting all these oxidized lipids. You're getting all this oxidized fat put in your body. Well, if your body is trying to create new cells, or if your body is creating more cholesterol, what does your body need? Your body needs the resources that it has. So if you don't have healthy omega-3s and all you have are oxidized omega-6s, well, that's what's going to be put in your cellular mitochondria and your lipid bilayer. That's what's going to be utilized in the creation of your cholesterol. So if your LDL is being created with oxidized lipids to begin with, well,
Not so good.
now instead of your LDL naturally becoming oxidized through the body process, it's already starting off that way. So if
Yeah.
you only have so many police officers looking after what should be a normal crime rate, if you want to look at it that way, to then bring it to be rehabbed, now suddenly the crime rate's 16 times what the police could even handle. So now
Yes.
they can't bring everybody to rehab, and that's
Yeah,
the
the
problem.
HDL cannot handle the LDL then again.
That's where we are as a society. We have so much of the wrong omegas in our body that are being utilized in the creation of everything within our body that our bodies can't keep up with it. That's why they say cancer is a metabolic disease. That's why they say, I mean, you will very rarely find somebody with cancer that eats one meal a day that eats just enough to survive, because their body is utilizing everything, and what it can't get, it's going through cell autophagy. It's getting whatever it can, and it's not wasting anything. But when your body has so much available resources and it doesn't need to look within to say, like, what do I need to fix? Well, what's going to happen? It's going to miss the cancer. It's going to be too busy trying to deal with
It's going to be
everything
lazy. It's not going to be sharp again, and it's just going to adapt to the circumstances. It's the same like with many people. Since we got everything in our society, many people got lazy, and from that laziness, they developed depression and all of kinds of disorders because they are not urged to do something for their survival.
Yeah, I actually have a theory with the whole depression concept and the anxiety concept, because it's something that I went through. But we're starting to finally go into the gut microbiome, which I'm excited to see all of the information we're going to learn, not in the next few years, but probably in the next 10 to 15 years, because there's just so much in our gut that we don't understand. But what I was thinking is, people, and this is why I guess this diet works so well for the people that have mental issues like schizophrenia and other things where drugs don't work, is because if you have something in your gut, if you have a certain strain of bacteria that isn't supposed to be as populated as it is, but it is, that bacteria is releasing enzymes into your body, chemical signals to your brain. Like when you first go on this diet and you're just like, and you suddenly start getting all these crazy cravings, the reality that I see with those cravings is it's not so much that your body wants it. It's your bacteria in your gut sending signals to your brain. This is the food I need. Put it out there. Come on, get him to eat it. This is what I want to keep thriving, because I'm starting to...
Because that bacteria is overpopulated.
Yes, and the overpopulation of those bacteria is creating an overabundance of certain enzymes that when they get to your brain, maybe that enzyme overrides your brain in a way like a computer virus. And
Yes,
maybe that's why because your brain is all chemical.
Yes.
So once the chemical imbalance is there, I mean, there's so many things that could happen. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about finding out, is seeing what in fact happens. I can't remember which hospital, but it's a major psychiatric hospital in America, where right now they're actually doing tests on a bunch of different psychiatric issues because meds don't work, and they want to see, and I haven't seen any results come out from this yet, but I am so eager, because I am convinced that we are going to get so much intriguing information that's going to continue to support what all the expert doctors and all the health coaches in the field, including myself, have basically been saying, where it's all of our issues stem from eating the wrong things.
Yeah, and probably damaging the gut.
Yeah, I mean, like psoriasis. Psoriasis is I think in Greek it comes down to like itchy skin, which basically was popping up in ancient Greece with Socrates. I think he's the one who may have coined it, or some ancient Greek philosopher, because it was prevalent. But that's when they started consuming. They were starting to do grains at that point. So everything was starting to go. But I have not seen any evidence or anything of where anything points to, there being some type of autoimmune issues before all of this new dietary changes took place. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine that around 15,000 years ago, our ancestral lines had autoimmune diseases. I mean, I didn't check the data, but intuitively, it sounds pretty irrational to me to assume that they had high rates of autoimmunity. Maybe they didn't even have one case of autoimmunity back then.
And people,
I mean, they had other issues. They died from lack of medication, from simple injuries, or injuries they couldn't get vetted by the medical system, but they didn't die from diabetes, obesity, inflammation, And they
No.
probably also did not have depression.
I mean, this is the craziest thing. What they say is back then, if you were able to make it to being 18 years of age, you were able to live a very, very, very long life. And when I say the mean was 35, there were people living much longer than that. And the crazy thing is these people, they were always able to move. They were always able to squat. They were always able to do these things that we can't do anymore today. How many people in their 70s do you see that could easily do a squat to the floor?
They would break their bones.
Like I can't even give you a percentage, but not many. And you
No.
then you look at our primal being. I mean, we're constantly moving. Like this is one thing that I love to say to my clients. Which do you think is healthier for you? Going on a 10,000 step fast-paced walk, or going on a 10,000 step moderate paced walk where every so often when you see something along your walk, you stop and you come to that level to enjoy it. So if you're walking by and you see a flower that you think is beautiful, squat down and really observe it and really appreciate it and take it in. And then you continue your walk. Which one do you think would be a better benefit for the body?
B.
Exactly. Because you want to incorporate as many different movements into your daily life. Like people that say you sit all day, that's not good. So get a standing desk. But do you really think standing all day is good for you either? No. It's better. Now, when you're sitting all day, your hamstrings, your buttocks, everything shortens, your hip flexors tighten. When you stand, it doesn't happen in the same way. But what if we're adding squatting into that now? Like that's even healthier, because that's what we would be doing daily throughout the entire day. We'd be going to the floor.
You want to have like fluctuation and variability in your movements, and it might also correlate with heart rate variability, which is also not supposed to be constant, because I mean you can get into that, but it's not good if your heartbeat is continuously at the same level all the time.
No, it definitely isn't. And what I tell my clients when they work out is you want to basically do 180 minus your age. And that's basically the top of the line of where you want your heart rate to be when you're working out. So me, I'm 33 years old. I want my heart rate to be like 150 when I'm working out. If I go above that, I'm getting myself into like this black hole of like, are we aerobic? Are we anaerobic? Are we chronically exercising? What may it be? But it's not about passing that threshold, because there's really no reason to it. Like, do you think when it comes to our ancestors, like, do you think I did a post of like of a primal man running on a primal treadmill. Like, do you think our ancestors were working out? No, they didn't need to work out.
That was not required, because by the external forces there was so much variance in physical performance that it was not necessary. The system was trained so well and precisely that there was no need for specific exercise.
Because you were exercising all day.
Yeah, right.
You were literally exercising all day. You want to block the river to create a fishing point? Well, you're moving heavy boulders. You're setting up camp. Well, you're bringing heavy logs to help create the structure for your tent or for whatever your structure is. I mean, it was constant. Walking long distances, having to climb to get better viewpoints, all these different aspects. Our bodies were challenged every day. So what I find really interesting about that is I said, well, what if we started to change the way we look at fitness? And that's something that I've also done in conjunction with this diet, because if we've been eating incorrectly all this time, well, maybe we're also thinking about the way we're supposed to move incorrectly all this time. So one thing that I love to do, and I tell my clients, is when you're going through something like actually during this podcast, I've wanted to stop a few times to like just do push-ups or like just do squats, because that moment of stopping and just doing aerobically as many push-ups as you can until you start to have that breath changing, that moment of you dropping down doing 40 push-ups, and then let's say 30 minutes later you did another 40, and then 30 minutes later, 45 minutes later you did 50, and then you did 20, 10, 40. When you look at that throughout the entire day, you didn't go through a one stressful time frame. Your body was exercising throughout, and your body's burning calories at the same rate. So instead of burning 1,400 calories or 1,000 calories in a 45-minute session, you're burning the same amount without stressing your body out.
You have a decent threshold throughout the day that's going to keep you overall or overarchingly healthy.
Oh, yeah. And then let's go a step further, right? So if you are carnivore, and let's say at this point you haven't eaten yet, and you're now working out on a fast, you're a male, your human growth hormone is going to be produced up to 2,000 times greater than it would have previously. If you're a woman, that's up to 1,800%. So think about that. When we're exercising, if we exercise on fast, our body creates more anabolic hormones, such as testosterone, such as human growth hormone, right? And then this is what blows my mind about people who exercise today is they say, I just did a hard workout. Let's go eat, whatever
Bring it.
carbs I want because I have a 30-minute window where I'm replenishing my glycogen stores. Go for it. But you know what's really sad about you deciding to flood your body with insulin because it's now a master hormone is that insulin is actually going to take up the receptor that the HGH would go in your cell. So now, instead of your body being able to utilize the HGH to be able to grow, now the insulin's taking its spot and your body's is gonna repair itself as it normally would instead of getting this other level. So this year, since my appendix, I have not been able to work out, and I actually I had to get something removed on my back, which it didn't the stitches didn't close correctly, and it kind of like opened up, so like I haven't really been able to exercise. So last year I was squatting, over. I mean, I think my biggest squat was 305. I was deadlifting, like 360 pounds, whatever it may be. I was really lifting heavy in the gym. This year, I haven't been doing that. And with me just utilizing push-ups, planks, squats, and pull-ups, my body is actually, I'm putting on muscle. Like I'm wearing a black shirt. You can't really see anything, but like I'm extremely fit. And I'm not exercising in the way that I would have normally because I've been finally put in a situation where I can't. And I'm seeing how this concept is actually taking things to a whole nother level to where when I work with my clients now, I don't even tell them to go to the gym for 45 minutes. If you want to go to the gym and you want to lift heavy, go for 30 minutes max. Lift heavy, keep the weight consistent. The moment your form starts to change, stop. It's not about pushing yourself to do the one more rep. It's about pushing yourself to do each rep perfectly. And your body will grow from that. You don't need to be so tired that you feel like you can't lift your arms. Like at that point, you're chronically stressing yourself out and you're gonna activate DOMS. Like you don't want that. So, because like think about it. If now let's say you're sore as hell, and now let's say we're back in 2,000 years ago, and suddenly that saber-toothed tiger's showing up, like you think you're gonna outrun that saber-toothed tiger when your body's already like in such a weakened state because it's not optimal, it's recovering? No.
If you have like a lot of maybe accumulative is not the right word, but if you have consistently a lot of damage in your muscles because you have a lot of working load on your muscles and you have those rips or tears in your muscle, if you are out in the wild, it's gonna be hard to outrun, a saber-toothed tiger with a dysfunctional muscle.
That's when you're tripping Joe.
When you're tripping Joe, what does that mean?
Well, you know what they say. Sometimes when you're in a group and a bear shows up, it's just about running a little bit faster than the guy next to you. So, like maybe that was the edge that person would have done, but like you're not in a survival strong point. You're just not. And one of my favorite things, and like this is actually the craziest experiment, and it proved true through all the conversations that I've heard personally. Because I used to go to the gym 5 days a week for about an hour. And since my appendix, I haven't been able to do that. So I'm not feeling swole all the time, which is literally inflammation in the muscles. Like that's what swole is. You're inflaming yourself.
Yes.
And you have to repair yourself. So last year, every time I would get my cholesterol drawn, my total cholesterol would be about 470. And this year,
is that good? I'm not familiar with cholesterol level.
So they want your cholesterol in America to be under 200. So to give you an idea, my cholesterol is 270 points higher.
Yeah.
And that's why my doctor's like, you're going to die of a heart attack. Like you should be taking baby aspirin twice a day. And
shame on yourself, Michael.
And that's why I started this whole journey, because I wanted to make sure I have 2 young kids. I have a wife that I love. Like the last thing I want to do is do something that's going to make me, it's going to make me terminate early. And now I'm not here for my loved ones. And that's why I started going down this whole rabbit hole. And I never in a million years never thought I would be where I am right now. I never thought I would have created the Ancestrally Healed page. Like, I'm a private person. And when I started to see how my health was improving, and when people would talk to me and I would go into the different topics like I am with you and the information that I've gained from listening to different expert doctors in the field speak and whatnot, they would say to me, why don't you do a podcast? There's so many people you could help. And after hearing enough of that, it got to the point where I said, you know what? I haven't been on Instagram in 5 years. I said I would never go back. But I think that if I put my story out there and I could just help one person in this world that was stuck in the same situation as me, medications, thinking that's the only way to go, worried about every time I'd get a call. And I told the pharmacist with the Stelara, I said I was adding cinnamon in, and they're like, oh, I need to patch you over because we don't know. We need to jot that down. God forbid there's an interaction. And that was like, wait, you don't even know what this drug is going to do long term, other than it just stops my skin from showing these red flaky patches that I don't want. And so when I started looking at all of that, it kind of wait, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. Where was I? What was the reason for me going down this path? Because I was about to come all the way back around with it.
Yeah, you were talking about when you were taking that injection and you were combining cinnamon with it, that the doctors advised you not to do it because they did not know the implications and contraindications that might occur from that.
So, so you have all that going on. You have my doctor telling me I'm going to die, take baby aspirin at 33 twice a day, which will kill me by the time I'm probably 40. I mean, my blood vessels that will cause heart disease 100%. And then you get to the point where she starts talking to you about your cholesterol levels and all these different things. And you're like, but I feel healthy. Like I feel the best I've ever felt. And then my appendix happens and I'm not able to work out the way that I was able to previously. And my cholesterol went from 470 to 370. From me not working out in a chronic way, my cholesterol, my LDL dropped 100 points, which tells me that at the end of the day, your cholesterol is going to adjust based off of what your body's needs are. So if you are going to be inflaming your muscles 5 days a week, you know for a fact your LDL is going to go up because your LDL is going to be the first one there on the scene. Your LDL is there to help you repair. Like when you're
to investigate the crime scene or to put down the fire at the crime scene. Yeah,
literally. Like let's go a step further and let's talk about heart disease.
And sure.
Obviously I'm not a licensed doctor,
or cardiologist.
But this is all information that I have gained from my own research, listening to doctors talk about all this. But what happens is something damages your endothelium in your arterial vessel, whether it be you consuming too much grains or whatever, or maybe it's the leptins or the oxalates, or there's something that's dietary wise or stress wise that's causing a weakening of your artery, which is causing inflammation, right? Just like when your muscle's inflamed and your LDL is going there, when you have inflammation in your heart, your LDL goes right there. And if you have a small, dense LDL, well, that's going to go right in that spot and it's going to try and hold like a scab. Think of it like a scab. It's trying to stop the bleeding, and whatever the issue is, it's trying to keep it there. And what your body's job is, so now your body is going to have different parts to deal with instances like this. And within this, I believe it's called the macrophages in your white cells in your immune system, that when it senses that that's covering your endothelium, it goes over to it and it actually wants to try and remove it. But it can't, because the LDL doesn't want to let go, because it's like, I'm not letting go of this. Are you crazy? If I let go of this, the floodwaters, we're going to have all these issues. I'm the one that's stopping this issue from even happening. It's like when the White Walkers were trying to come over the wall in Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? So it's there trying to be like try to be that last defense. And these macrophages are like, no, you shouldn't be here. We need to get you out of here. It's like this tug of war, but the small dense is stronger. So what happens is that macrophage is getting so exhausted trying to pull this LDL out of there that it starts to swell up and it becomes a foam cell. And now that it's swelled up and it's become a foam cell, it's like, oh God, I need help. And it starts releasing cytokines, a chemical that now attracts even more that creates more of the macrophages. That then creates the same process, and eventually that
pro-inflammatory cycle. Yeah.
But if you could figure out what it is that's causing that inflammation to begin with, it resides. And what happens? The LDL lets go. And the vitamin K2 removes the calcification and starts to remove it. And everything starts to clear up. My biggest concern about all this is you hear evidence of, if you have heart disease, to go on like this bean fiber diet and like no protein and no fats and all these things. And they say that there's been success with that. But I didn't know if in fact being able to eat this way would do the same type thing, until I finally heard some doctors mention that they had patients that had calcification. And after doing this this high fat, high protein, low carb ketogenic diet, they started having reverse of the calcification in the arteries. That was like, yes, because if what they saying was the cause for all this to happen also happens to also be the thing that seems to be clearing it up, that is powerful. That's when you start to really think and say, aha. So if
you need to identify the root cause and cut it out.
Exactly. And I'm convinced if you cut out processed grains, seed oils, and processed sugars, you're 90% of the way there. And if you're, I don't know if you could hear Mia, she's singing E-I-E-I-O in the background. It's
like, she was saying something. I could hear that.
She loves to sing it when she goes to bed. It's like 7 o'clock at night. You just hear her going E-I-E-I-O. It's the cutest thing. She loves Old MacDonald, and the cow is her favorite part on that farm. Let me tell you, she respects the cow. But when you start looking at all of that, and you see that what was considered to be the villain happens to also be the cure in a way, and I say cure loosely because I'm not going to say like, if you just start eating this way, like all of your issues are going to go away.
It's not a universal remedy, but it is evident to you that it can help a lot of people, and coping or relating to the mechanism you just described, that it's logical, that it's a good potential cure for that root cause.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I posted a video. I think it's one of my pinned ones on my reels, but I took a cup of water and I put just a little bit of coffee in it, and it shows you what the body's supposed to look like when it's water. And when you put the coffee in it, it shows what the body turns into. And then it shows what functional healing looks like. And that's when I turn on the faucet and you see the water start to bubble over, and it takes time for that water to finally become clear again. People, what happens is they treat their bodies so poorly for so many years that when it comes time that they're like, hey, I need to look at this, they get frustrated that they can't just take them out. It just can't end immediately. But like, if you ever go on hiking in the forest, if you walk 10 miles out into that trail, you're walking 10 miles back. Like, there is no shortcut. And that's exactly what happens with our dietary habits. Everything builds up on each other. It takes us further away, and then we have to work to come back. And the more metabolically dysfunctional your body is, the more inflamed your body is, the longer it's going to take to come back. And what I find very interesting is when people start to see positive results and like, oh, you know what, I could have a cheat day. It comes back, and sometimes it comes back even harder because now the body's like, hey, I'm finally healing, and now you're gonna like scratch off my scab and make me start this all over again. Now what would have just been a very easily healed wound, now you have a scar. God forbid you keep scratching that scab off. I mean, it's just gonna get uglier and nastier, and that's what happens to our body as we continue to just abuse it. Especially because we want that short-term dopamine fix of, oh my God, I haven't had that food that I've eaten in a while, and it makes me feel so happy and so good, but that's all smoke and mirrors to trick your brain into consuming it, because that's how we design our food.
Irrational self-deception.
I think Frito-Lay's has a center set up in Europe where they literally measure brain waves, how the brain responds with dopamine and serotonin based off of the crunch of the chip, based off of I mean, everything that they put into their product is designed to get this specific reaction out of your conscious. I mean, if that's not mind control,
it is. Yeah, they in the food industry invested trillions of dollars into very renowned scientists to optimize food for addiction. So on Saturday, currently my best friend, we've been friends for 20 years. He lives in Vienna, the capital of Austria, and he's in my hometown twice a year. And he came with his girlfriend. We were at his place, and another friend with his girlfriend came by, and we were eating those coated with some crispy dough and bell pepper powder. And I mean, I was eating it. I know it's not healthy. I mean, we've been talking about health for 2 hours now. I'm confessing that I was eating something that's not healthy. But that doesn't mean that by the end of the day, I eat unhealthy. So for anyone who's ideologically brainwashed trying to get me there, that doesn't work, buddy. But it's not that easy. You need to think a little further, bro. Like sometimes maybe you can sin a little bit here and there. But so, and I was like, that guy was starting off eating those crispy nuts, let's call it like that. And he was like, I cannot stop eating. And I was like, yeah, I know why you can't. And then I started eating, and I was aware of it. I accepted it. I surrendered to it. And I was like, yeah, and I was eating, I didn't, even though I was aware about it, I couldn't stop eating for like 20, 30 minutes. It's like,
Yeah.
and even though they didn't taste that nice, it's not, I think most of the times it's not really so much about the taste, because I never eat sugar. If I eat sugar, like maybe fructose, dates, something like that, all right. But if I eat sugar, my system is like, because I'm very well aware about it, this is so disgusting. Like refined industrialized sugar is so fucking disgusting. But like so many people, I think when psychologically and neurochemically people state, I like that food, but they're so unconscious, they don't really like that food. The system just responds correspondingly to it. And that's what they perceive as enjoying and liking that food. But it's a neurochemical addictive reaction that is happening not only in their brain, but also in their brain and in their system.
Yeah.
So they confuse hijacking with enjoying.
And I could attest to that, because after like not having cantaloupe for a year, I decided to like have a little taste because my son was having it for a snack, and it just tasted so fake and chemically.
What did you eat? I didn't understand that.
It was like, so my son, because I'm not going to throw a carnivore diet on a 4-year-old, because at the end of the day, if you try and force something on them, they're going to go so far away from it.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
like, so we keep as much of the bad stuff away, and of course, like we have to have, you know, some things to make them feel normal. But I'm a big believer of be the leader, not the teacher. So I'm not going to sit there and say, this is what you need to do. I'm going to be the example. And if you ask questions, I'll be there, because
Yeah.
just like any type of marketing, inbound marketing has the greatest rate of return. And if they are ready and they're looking forward to this other possibility, and they're the one that wants to know, they're more likely to get the information from it. But if you're just going to throw it at them and it's something that they're not ready to receive, they're going to be like, yeah, right. You know, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to do what I want. So when you just are the role model and you just show how things improve and how optimal things are, I mean, they're going to follow suit. Like my son sees me doing push-ups all the time. You know, sometimes now I'll walk into his room and I'll see him doing push-ups, 4 years old. And it's just because he's seeing me do it. Now imagine if I was the standard American father who's eating the standard American diet, who is just going to work and then come home and I just sit on the TV and I watch TV, and, you know, I'm living an absolute sedentary life. What do you think is going to happen to my kid? Same exact thing.
It's going to be an identical copy.
And that's why people, like, when they start getting into familial predispositions, and they're like going back to like where we were beforehand, like, hey, if I looked at my familial predispositions, I would say, hey, I'm going to live a shitty life. But the reality is your familial predispositions are clues to tell you how your life may end out if you happen to choose the wrong ancestrally appropriate choices. That comes to not moving around a lot. That comes to, you know, not paying attention. Like, do you know how many people just today, like, driving your car? Do you know that driving your car has become so simple that most people aren't even paying attention when they drive, which is why so many fatal accidents happen? Because life is so easy. It's like there's roads that go straight, and America curves every so often. You know, you don't have to worry about rock slides and all these.
You don't need to worry about shit.
You don't. And that's a part, and that's another sad thing that goes against our ancestral mindset, is we're supposed to be aware of our environment constantly. I mean, God forbid we were in the woods. Like, if you were in the woods by yourself, wouldn't you be a little bit like, is there something
More
watching me?
alert?
Like, could I be food? Like, you're almost walking through life in a different mindset. And that's the mindset we should actually have all the time. Not being anxious about it, but being aware, you know, finding ways to release, not by, you know, doing alcohol, but by playing. Go play with your kids. Go do some sprints, you know, go do these different aspects to get these releases, but don't be sedentary, because sedentary is death. And that's why so many people, they can't move when they're 80 years old. Because the reason why they can't move when they're 80 is because they stopped moving when they were 30. And it took 40 years, everything. And
yeah, not only muscle, yeah.
And what's even, and the reason why they're losing the muscles on top of everything else is they're so glucose dependent. Like that's what breaks my heart with the elderly, is like, you'll see them fall and they'll be so healthy, and they'll fall, and then the next time you see them, it's like they're gone. In the matter of that week from them falling, they like disappear. Yes. And some people can bounce back. A lot of people, unfortunately, that's how they meet their end.
That's a death sentence. When you're pretty old and you fall, and you also don't have not so many muscles, and your system is not agile and robust, and once you break a bone, it happened to my grandma. So she had dementia and she fell over a stair. So she was walking up the stair, and probably also the dementia had a effect on her overall coordination, but she probably also lost muscles to keep herself in balance and keep herself upright under tension. You know, that the body is physically resilient. If you walk up a stair, that you don't fall back, that you don't bounce back, that you can also hold the gravitational forces and balance that out. And she walked up once. No, she didn't even fall off a stair. There was before, and she fell on her head. She was just walking on common ground, and she fell and broke her leg. And 1 week later, she passed away, aged 80. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about.
It's all right.
That.
It was
I
like
don't know
8 years ago, so I think I'm over it.
Yeah, I mean, we tell ourselves that, but if I bet you if you closed the door and you really went into a mindset where you started thinking about it all again, I mean, with me, it floods back. We figure out ways to cope with it.
Yeah, I get it.
And be able to move on in a positive way, but it's always there, and it sticks with us. But what I could say from my most recent experience, where I had gotten a foodborne from things not being done correctly. I mean, I couldn't eat for 6 days. I mean, I was literally running to the bathroom for 6 days. And normally I would have started to lose weight. I would have started to lose muscle. I would have started to use all these things because my body was would crave those nutrients. But because I'm so fat adapted, which is where I think the elderly are actually at a loss. If the elderly were fat adapted and they were to fall, I don't think their muscle would waste away in the same way that it does, in the same process and speed that it does. Because before, like, you can ask my wife, my weight fluctuates so easily, and I lose weight like this. Like, it pisses her off sometimes, where she's like, you were 152 pounds yesterday. How are you 146 pounds? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, how do you do this?
That is crazy.
My body could really, really move. But once I finally understood how to eat correctly, to be truly fat adapted, like, I could not eat today and I'll be okay. Like, I might get a little hungry tonight, but like, I'm not going to start wasting away, because my body knows, like, hey, you've got all this stored fuel, and that protein and that fat is coming. So when I couldn't eat for 6 days, I didn't lose any weight. I kid you not. Like, I did not go below 152 pounds. And normally I was expecting to hop on the scale and be 104. I thought I was going to lose 10 pounds. I didn't lose any. I lost 3 pounds throughout the entire event. It was probably just my body eating through my fat reserves. So when I look at my own personal experience, and then I start thinking about the elderly, where they fall, they are so glucose dependent, they're not able to get the foods that they need. Now they're sedentary, and their body's like, well, we need the glucose. You're not using the muscle. There we go. We're going to take it from here and put it there. And they just waste away. And I hope one day there's enough people in our community that, like, stick with this long. Not saying I want them to fall and break their hip and whatnot, but I want there to be some type of evidence to prove that when you get yourself into that type of a situation, your body is actually able to handle itself better being fat adapted, and you won't waste away in the same way that the elderly does today. Basically giving them a chance to continue.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So it's an interesting theory, and I'm just going to continue to listen to doctors speak about their patients, and hopefully, I can get evidence to truly back up that theory.
Yeah, I mean, if people really went back more to their roots and listened to their intuition, I think we as a human species could intensely embrace our potential, because right now in so many aspects, psychologically, physically, spiritually, we delve away from our real potential.
Yeah. No, we 100% have. And it's sad, but it's something that I think we could come back from. And what I love is there's enough people like us that are making enough noise that it's kind of hard for people
like your kids.
Yeah, right. But it's kind of hard not to pay attention to it. And I think we're moving in the right direction. I think there's a lot of things going on globally on a larger scale, which is going to make things a little bit harder. Just because people, at the end of the day, they want to protect their industries. On a quick side note, going back to when we were talking about global warming, when people complain about global warming and it affecting us people, it's not about affecting our life. Because for every degree it gets warmer, plants can grow that much further north. So more plants can grow, meaning more carbon dioxide and more gases are going to be filtered, more oxygen is going to be produced, all these different things. It doesn't sound like a bad thing. Like, you see these glaciers crack and fall within a year. The hill that's now shown as rock, there's plants growing on it. So that's not a terrible thing.
No, I don't think so.
if you've been in France and your family's been growing wine for the last 450 years, and now suddenly France could be 4 degrees warmer, which would completely affect the way the grapes grow, well, now that's a problem for me. It's not a problem for the world. It's a problem for my industry. So we've made global warming a human issue when it's really an industry issue, because people don't want to change. They want to stay and keep doing what they're doing. But that's not how the world works. We are meant to adapt. That's why we survived. That's why we're here. You know, there was one time where we left Africa. I think it was like 35,000 years ago. And we were in like the Israel-Lebanon area, and an ice age came through and basically killed everybody. And there was only like 1,000 of us Homo sapiens left in Africa, because they didn't leave with the other group. And from that group, that was our second chance to basically leave the region and go around the Arabic Peninsula and all those different areas. And that's really how we flourished. But the first time we left, it was not a successful leave. Like, we almost became extinct. Like, one of our other ancestral cousins was almost the strongest. I mean, it's wild. Did you know that if you took a blood test, I think it's like 98% of people all have Neanderthal genes in them?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I mean, but like, and there's only 1% that doesn't. That's the percentage that never left Africa. So when you look at all of that, like, to where the world's gone, from how close we were as a species not to make it to making it, and how we've been here, it's mind blowing. And the one other thing that I really want to touch on is I find that a lot of people, when they are worried about the food they consume and when they're worried about their own body image, a lot of people, they think to themselves, well, what's the most amount of food that I could consume and not gain weight? But what I actually like to tell people on the other side of the coin is, what if we thought about things like this? What if we said, what is the least amount of food that we can consume to maintain our physique, to maintain our energy, and to be able and to not deteriorate? Where is that threshold? And I think
that's more of a reductionistic, more humbling mindset, because right now people, they are, I mean, due to that environmental overgrow, they feel kind of like a lack inside themselves, and that's why they try to push it to the limit.
Yeah. And I think if we can get ourselves to really start thinking just a little bit differently, flipping the script, I think we would be amazed at how far our health and how much of a lack thereof of the health issues that we're actually all going through in a society. I've helped people work on their gout to where it's 98% better. I've had people with psoriasis, which is one of the hardest skin issues to deal with. I mean, in a month, you could barely even see evidence of redness on the skin. I mean, people that have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, all these different issues of people that have reached out to me that have gotten so much relief, literally just by cutting out the crap and eating what they're supposed to eat. I mean, and it's going to get to a point where you can't ignore it. You just can't.
Yeah, and the funny, also threatening thing is that the elites, we can also call it industry, however you want to call it, that they want to get rid of meat due to climate change.
Well, if they do that, a lot more of us would be taking medication, which would be better for all of them, because I've yet to meet one vegetarian who's been a vegetarian for more than 5 years that isn't taking some type of crazy supplement to make up for all the lack of vitamins that they're not getting in their food. I mean, it's insane. I was getting into a discussion with a vegetarian the other day where they're like, oh, I had a bone density test done and my bone density is fine. I'm like, yeah, that's a false positive, because it's showing that your bones are dense, but it's actually filled with calcium oxalate. It's not actually your true bone material. And that's something that people are not willing to accept, is what are the consequences of actually eating vegetables? What is the consequence of eating a leaf that doesn't want to be eaten? What is the consequence of eating a root that doesn't want to be pulled out of the ground?
Do you think that in general, no one should consume vegetables at any given point?
I think if you were in a situation where you were about to die and you need that to try and make it to the next day, I would say eat the vegetable.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I would say eat it, because that's what it was there for. I mean, I don't think we ever consumed vegetables like the way we do today. Like broccoli, we invented it. Broccoli does not grow in nature. You will never find a broccoli.
So earlier you said that Paul Saladino, he eats honey, fruits, meat, and maybe some nuts. But why are fruits in your...
he doesn't touch any nuts. He believes he does not touch any seeds, any nuts, because which is the same with me. And I know when you were talking about the nuts previously, when you're eating it with your friend, I actually was going to bring it up that nuts is actually one of the largest causes of diverticulitis. And I have friends who told me they had diverticulitis. I said, "Were you eating nuts?" And they said, "Oh, by
What
the
is
handful."
diverticulitis?
Diverticulitis is basically like colon failure. It's like your intestines are so messed up and so inflamed that it's just not, it's failing. So you'll have a lot of bleeding, a lot of discomfort, you'll have all these different symptoms that come with it. And that's just because the way that the nuts are, like, if you were, first of all, almonds, if you try to eat those more than 100 years ago, they'd kill you. And we bred them to where they're not poisonous because they're such high oxalate foods. If you look at what the process is, like if you find an almond in nature and you want to eat an almond, do you know how long it's going to take you to take that one almond, get it out of its shell, and then process it to where you could consume it? We were
20
never
minutes?
we would never be able to take our hand, put it in a bag, and throw a whole mouthful of almonds. It's not natural. We would never be able to do that. I mean, think about it. It would take so much time. So when we're now consuming something that would be so minimal and we're consuming it as a normal in such large quantities, what's going to happen? There's so many defense chemicals, so many lectins, so many issues that go on with it. It's going to destroy the lining of your gut. And once that happens and you have leaky gut, well, they believe leaky gut system is the cause of like 85% of our diseases.
So getting back to the fruit vegetable
Yes, I'm
relation.
sorry.
No, it's all right. Why is it fine to eat fruits but not vegetables?
So when you think of a fruit, the purpose of the plant creating it is for an animal to be attracted to it, to take that vessel from the parent plant, let's say a mango from the mango tree, and bring it a certain distance to where now a new tree could grow. That's the whole purpose. The purpose of a fruit is to attract
Interesting.
you. And if you look at real fruits in the wild, like
So fruits always have seeds, any fruit.
Oh, and if you look at wild fruits, the seeds are an even bigger component of the fruit than the actual flesh itself.
Yeah.
We've bred like a banana. If you find a wild banana, you will be mind blown on how little
That's
actual.
interesting. I never thought about it that way. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
And the reason why, and in my opinion, the reason why in the Bible it says when you consume the fruit, consume the seed. Because think about it. If you consume the seed, when you poop that seed out and you don't crush the seed, that seed is literally in fertilizer. So if you were at a point where now you're pooping over there, well, at some point you're gonna have mango trees, growing out of it, or tomato plants or whatever it is. Like I was watching Naked and Afraid, and the guy's like, before I came, I ate tomatoes. I pooped there, and we're all peeing on there every day because hopefully I'll have tomatoes by the time we leave. And that's the real purpose of the fruit is hopefully you would consume it, go somewhere, fertilize it, it would come out, and then a new plant would be able to grow. And that's why it's sweet. That's why it's like there's this one fruit in Africa that becomes so ripened on the vine that it becomes alcoholic. And when this thing becomes ripe, you see all these animals passed out drunk on the floor, like literally. And I go a step further. If that seed could be in the animal and that animal were to die and that seed could grow from within with all of that nutrients, I mean, that's like the number one greatest planting situation a plant could ask for. So that's why. So the fruit is there for a reason to attract you to bring it to a certain point. I don't think
to alter reproduction of the species.
Exactly.
Fruit species.
And that's the point of it. But when you start looking at a vegetable, like a spinach leaf, that spinach leaf doesn't have an intention of being taken anywhere. It wants to be left alone so it could create photosynthesis for the plant. You look at the root, like the original carrot, that was used as basically an abortion pill. I mean, what a carrot has bred from was so toxic it could almost kill you, and that was a root. It doesn't want to be pulled from the ground. It wants to hold its plant steady so its leaves can do what it needs to do for the plant. You look at the stem of the plant, same thing. It's there for the foundation to keep the plant upright. It doesn't want to be eaten and taken. My favorite thing is asparagus. Like if you look at asparagus, have you ever seen what an asparagus grows into? It grows into a tree. It's this massive plant. We're eating the shoot that comes out of the ground while it's still soft. But once that thing hardens up, you can't do anything to that.
It becomes a tree. Okay.
Yeah, it becomes like this tree-like
so
thing.
one trunk.
It would blow your mind, but we cut it the moment it pops out of the ground, and because it's a shoot, we could eat it. Kind of like how when you'll watch pandas, they'll go for the bamboo shoot because it's softer. It's kind of like the same concept.
That kind of blows my mind, like the fruit vegetable dynamic. Like that's interesting.
And that's
That's
why
cool.
with me, like last year I was eating more fruit. This year I've been feeling less of a need. Maybe it's
Mm.
because we went through winter and maybe on a biological standpoint, fruit wouldn't be as available during the winter. But I haven't been having as much of a want for fruit this year. But who knows? Maybe in July and September, as things get hotter, maybe my body will potentially, want it because there are nutrients that come along with it. Not saying it's going to become a major proponent of my diet, but if I see there's a whole fruit salad there and I want to have, a handful of fruit and keep going, like that's not a big deal. That's what we would do in nature. I mean, that's about as natural as it could be. It's not about sitting there and creating shop. If you were hunting gathering, following it, there was a mango, you grab the mango and keep walking, and you'd eat it while you were going, and then you throw the seed down, and it would grow into. But you weren't walking with 1,000 mangoes on your back, so you could
No,
eat
it's like
mangoes every
it's
day.
seasonal and periodic consumption.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
again, for me, that's not where my mindset is because my body's healing and I haven't put myself at a point where I'm going to try and add in all of that because I don't feel the need to. I'm very happy with where I am. But when it comes to Paul has found that when he consumes this way and I think right now he's up to like almost 300 grams of carbs a day, but I think he exercises enough to not create an issue because I'm a strong believer that if you're consuming over 150 grams of carbs a day, you're putting yourself in a situation to become obese. Like that's my true stance on that. If you're consuming 100 grams of carbs or less, you're putting yourself in a situation to be fat adapted. And if you're consuming 50 grams or less, you're putting yourself in a situation to be keto adapted.
Yeah.
But I think the way that Paul does it specifically for him, I think it works very well for his lifestyle. I think it could work well for a lot of other people. For me personally, just because where my body is healing wise, I couldn't. Last year when I tried to eat a lot more fruit, it just didn't sit right with me. And
Yeah, your body signalized you that the ketogenic diet, that the KGI is, if the ratio is better with the ketones, that's better for your body.
Yeah. And perhaps maybe it's because of my appendicitis and everything else, like with healing, maybe my body wants to be in a deeper state of ketosis to be able to heal a little
Because
bit
it's
faster.
anti-inflammatory anyway. So I suppose if the lower the glucose level and the higher the ketone level, the KGI, it's better for you to heal.
Yeah.
So it's also pretty interesting. So Dr. Seafried, he's an oncologist, and he was on, I don't know if you know the Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett.
No, I haven't, but I gotta
So
check it
he has
out.
a podcast. It's pretty successful. Like he lives in the States. I'm not sure if he lives in Austin or something. And so Dr. Seafried says he had a patient. He had a glioblastoma, so a very dangerous and aggressive brain tumor. And usually people would die within 2 years, or not even 2 years, less than that. This guy survived 10 years because he was living on a ketogenic diet. So
That's amazing.
this kept this very deathly tumor in check. He ended up dying because there were some complications during a surgery, but it was not really because of the tumor.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because
That
it's also so the mitochondria in your cancer cells, they are not very good at processing ketones, and
they need
because
glucose. They need glucose.
yeah, exactly. And if you give them ketones, the mitochondria and the tumor is not gonna be able to produce energy to sustain, and then it's gonna die.
Yeah. And the other thing cancer can't stand is oxygen. It does not like oxygen and it does not like fat. It likes an antioxidant, high glucose environment. So
Yeah.
if you're somebody who, and this is what blows my mind, my grandmother, she died of lung cancer, and her doctor was like, hey, if you're hungry, just eat. If it's sugar, eat it, whatever it is. And looking back at now, it's like, you cannot tell somebody with cancer to eat sugar. If you tell them to do that, you're just asking for that, for that issue to expand at a much rapid rate because you're giving it all the food it could ever ask for.
Why
Like,
do you think is sugar so bad for cancer, or so supportive for cancer?
well, I know for a fact that that is the fuel source that cancer needs to grow. It needs sugar. It is like a sugar fiend. Like imagine that kid the day after Halloween, like just had the craziest sugar rush of his night. He wakes up the next day, he's like, oh, well, candy's left. That's what the cancer wants. It wants as much sugar because it allows it to be able to grow. And if you can cut that out, in Saladino's early podcast, there was this guy who had this very rare bone cancer that he actually didn't know that he had cancer. He went to turn one night when he was out of the shower and his leg snapped and he fell on the floor. He had no idea. He had no idea what the issue was.
Okay.
He ended up being diagnosed with an extremely rare bone cancer that the doctor said, he would have like 2 months to live. Yeah.
So bone cancer is not bone marrow cancer, right? It's not leukemia. Bone cancer is something different.
It wasn't leukemia. It was something even more rare.
Okay.
But the survival rate was so low. And when he finally found out what it was, he went on a ketogenic diet. And I was hoping that I was hoping I would hear him again on Saladino's podcast. And I never heard him come back on. So I don't know if something may have happened to him. But he actually went to a point where he went in such a ketogenic diet that he consumed just enough protein to be able to give his muscles what it needs, but not enough to create gluconeogenesis, and consumed a crap load of fat. And when he went to one of his cancer tests where they did a what is it? It's a scan where they basically put radiology like within it. So it's like it's basically like a glucose consumption that the cancer cells will absorb it, and when you x-ray it, it lights up like a Christmas tree. So you could see where the cancer is, like how much of it, if it's in different areas. And when he went to get scanned months later, there was no evidence of cancer in his body. And
I think I heard of that method before you just described. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was that was the beginning of me thinking of like, if I were to ever be diagnosed with cancer, what my cancer protocol for myself would be. And I mean, the first thing I would do is I'd probably fast for at least 10 days.
Water fast or dry fast?
I would do a water and electrolyte fast. Because at the end of the day, your body needs water and electrolytes to function on a cellular level. But when it comes to everything else, like your body, you could live for a very long time as long as you have salt and water. I mean, your body like could go much longer than we probably would even imagine. I know people do 30-day fasts. Like it's becoming more normal, which is crazy. Because for me to think not to eat for 30 days, like
that's crazy.
That's a little crazy, right? But so once you start thinking about, well, what happens if you find yourself in a situation? Well, I would fast for 10 days. I'd have water and salt. After that, I would then start to go into protein and fat. But the difference is I would go to a Chinese doctor that could put me in a hyperbaric chamber, because that additional oxygen flooding your body with starving the cancer, I believe putting all that together is like the ultimate way to just get rid of it. Because I feel like the moment you start chemo.
Oh yeah. Phil also said that on a podcast. I mean, temporarily you kill your cancer, but it's non-selective, so it kills the healthy cells as well. So you're gonna have a regression, and then regression rates are pretty high, I suppose, and then you will get cancer again. So it doesn't grapple the root cause. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not changing your diet, I mean, they say like most people have cancer, they don't change their diet, and when the cancer comes back, like they're like, well, why did it come back? And people say, well, it's just your genes. But again,
people
not.
People so naive nowadays. They think the system is going to fix everything for them, and that by naivety they're just gonna get extinguished and die early because they have too much faith in the system. They're like, I don't want to insult anyone, but this is the truth, that they are really, really naive. And this is a big, big problem. People need to use their brains again, because we are adapted to not use our brains right now. Like, people need to change. Otherwise, it's dangerous, very dangerous.
People don't like anxiety, and people create situations where they don't need to have the anxiety. So if they could say what my life is this is my destiny, and I don't need to worry about it because the doctors will fix it. Well, if you don't have to worry about it and you could have that convenience, that's what people want. And that's what gets you stuck, because you at that point, you've given over your control. You've given over your input. And that's the most dangerous thing a person can do, is say, my choices don't matter. You waking up with the sun, letting the sun hit your eyes, you not having sugar first thing in the morning, allowing your body to flood your body naturally with the cortisol release and the natural glucose production. I mean, you're at such a more stable position. You're not putting yourself in a situation where you have to, you basically have now lost control, because the moment you start that sugar first thing in the morning, that's it. The moment you start coming down, you don't want to feel
You're
tired.
done. You are in the vicious circle.
That's it. You are 100% in a vicious circle.
If you consume sugar all day long, you're going to have systematic inflammation.
That's good. And that's going to express your non-ancestral genes. It's going to express the genes that help with that short-term reaction, like your insulin flooding. But we all know when insulin comes into play, it affects every other hormone. So if it's going to affect your anabolic hormones, it's going to affect all your hunger hormones. If it affects everything, why do we want to bring that into the picture? Or why do we want to bring it why do we want to bring it to the party as often as everybody brings it? It just doesn't make sense. It's
Yeah,
like
right.
it's like if you know every time you invite Smith to the party, he becomes drunk and embarrasses everybody, and it kind of becomes a weird time. Why are you inviting Smith to the next party? It doesn't make any sense.
And to add what you just said, we developed a mindset or a time in which it is okay to invite Smith to the party, even though we know that he is going to behave unsocially.
I know, it's the craziest thing. It's like and then you have Ozempic, like to try and help with that situation. It's just the craziest thing. We just need to get to the point where we recognize that our choices expresses either positive genes or negative genes. When you are in ketosis, you are expressing positive genes. You're expressing healing genes. You're allowing your HGH to work in a way that it couldn't work otherwise. You're allowing your testosterone. Everything is able to function in a different rate. But the moment you have insulin come into your body, that's it. Party's over. You got to stop until your body deals with what it needs to deal with. And that's why they say if you consume processed sugar, like the reason why so many people are sick between Halloween and it's because everybody's consuming candy. Yeah. Everybody's consuming sugar. So if everybody's consuming sugar, and it's been shown that when you consume processed sugar, your immune system basically stops, like until your body deals with the sugar. So if your immune system,
So there I saw, it's a reel, but there's a doctor, I don't remember his name. It's Dr. Artis. Do you know him?
Maybe.
We
may have seen the same reel actually, but
he said going? So there's an immunosuppressant called prednisone, and sugar is around 3 times more immunosuppressant as prednisone, and prednisone is made to suppress the immune system.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean the implications. I think the implications are clear, very clear to the audience. Like, yeah, that's very wild. If let's say a natural product, okay, sure, sugar gets refined and processed, but still. A natural product outcompetes a medication in immunosuppressing properties. Like, that's insane.
Well, and we have to remember, all the medications that we have today, it all came from nature. Penicillin, it came from a fungus it came from a fungus from a mushroom from like a farmer's market in San Francisco, if my memory serves me correctly. Like every medicine that we've created has come from a plant. So and that's where my mindset really comes with plants, is I think all plants, they have a medicinal purpose. I don't think it's supposed to be something that's going to be done every day. Like people say broccoli is anti-cancer. They're absolutely right. Broccoli is anti-cancer. It will literally explode your cells. And when your cells knows it's happening, they like try to get away from the one that's about to explode because they don't want to be compromised. But that doesn't mean it's not doing it to your good cells also. And just because it's anti-cancer, does that mean it's something you should be taking? Like, hey, chemo's anti-cancer. You want to take chemo every day?
Yeah, that's a generalization, assuming just because it's anti-something you categorize as bad, that it's holistically good. That's a black and white thinking you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, like the craziest thing is dandelion, a weed that everybody thinks is so bad. It's one of the greatest blood pressure reduction teas that you could take. I mean, there's just so many things when it comes to plants on what it does for different functions on a medicinal level, but it's not supposed to be in your diet daily. It's just not. And anybody that says that it is, you are 100% entitled to your opinion. I'm going to keep eating the way that I am. You keep eating the way that you are. And hopefully we're both alive in 60 years. And let's talk about who's healthier, because that's my goal. I want to be that 90-year-old on Instagram that's bench pressing 225, that's able to do 150 push-ups straight, doing pull-ups, just being completely ancestrally fit, telling everybody who said that what I was doing was wrong, that I was right. And not like a nanny boo-boo type, I was right, a humbled I was right. Because at the end of the day, me knowing that I was right, I know that all these people who decided to go a different route, they didn't have the healthiest life. They could have been more optimal. They could have been healthier. They could have been able to functionally move better. They could have had all these other aspects of their life that they missed out on because they unfortunately believed the wrong nonsense. It sounded good. It played with their empathy, their emotions. It made them feel like they were a good person. But in the end of the day, it's a hypocratic. It's hypocrisy.
Yeah,
And
yes.
it's
I
and
agree.
it's sad.
Yeah, we really, yeah, that's how people's consciousness and systems got
Like
hijacked.
like let me tell you, like, this is a crazy story. So I have a friend of mine who is from Romania, and her parents eat pig fat, pork, all these animal products. They drink, they smoke, all these things. And she 10 years ago became a vegetarian, and then she got breast cancer.
Oh,
She had to go through the process of dealing with that, which she's healthy now.
do you think that's all because of the anti-nutrients and the lectins?
I think it's a lack of having the correct proportion of omega-3s, because remember, what fatty lipids you have available in your body, that's what's being used when you're creating more cells. So if you don't have correct omega-3s, which is going to tighten the cell wall, and you have a lot of omega-6s, it's been shown that the mitochondria and the lipid layer widens a little bit. It's not as efficient. And when that happens, it allows things to in a much easier way affect it. Like, I believe Anthony Chaffee just touched on it, but I heard about it a little over a year ago. Where what was it? It was hold on, I just lost what
It's
was
all
he
right.
saying? What was it? Can you do me a favor? I kind of lost the premise because I was trying to bring it all back around. Can you kind of like backlog me and bring me back to where we just were to kind of help spark where I was going? Sorry for that.
So you were talking about Anthony Chaffee, that
Yes.
he was talking about something, and before that you mentioned your friend from Romania that got breast cancer after she turned vegetarian. And I asked you if it might be because of the anti-nutrients and the
So
lectins.
So I don't think it's so much about the anti-nutrients. What I think it is it's the cell wall. It's the cell membrane
Because
itself.
of the omega-3s, that the cell was not that healthy.
Exactly. It's not 100%. So there was a study that was done in the 70s, and this is what Shafi recently brought up, where this guy took a cell that had a perfectly healthy mitochondria, and he injected it with cancer. And the cell, because it was a healthy cell, and obviously cells, they take care of themselves because they have a job to do, was
Yeah.
able to combat the cancer. But when they were able to inject a cell that had a
Compromised
compromised,
mitochondria.
and let's call it flooded in with omega-6s versus omega-3s because you're a vegetarian and that's all you're consuming, well, that cancer was able to take over, and it replicated, and it became a legitimate cancer. And that was one of the things I actually told her is the reason why I believe your parents had no issues with their health, and you did, is because you went away from healthy animal fats and you went to all of these plant-based foods. And even in Saladino's book, he referenced where certain lectins will actually cause the cells in your breast tissue to become irregular and gives you a higher chance of potentially getting breast cancer. So if you're a vegetarian and you have breast cancer, I believe that the plants 100% were a reason for why it happened, and you not maintaining with the correct omegas is solidified that situation. So what I said to her was, would you do me a favor if I gave you my own personal heart and liver pills? And I go, you're a vegetarian, so I don't want to like go against whatever your moral compass may be, but would you be willing to try this? And I also want to give you these, it's suet encapsulated. It's a very high stearic acid omega-3 in the suet of a ruminant animal. And what it's been shown is that it will actually, for vegetarians, because they don't have a lot of omega-3s, when that omega-3 comes in, it tells the mitochondria, like, hey, it's time to wake up. Like, let's start burning again. And it actually tightens the mitochondria, and it actually makes it better at burning fat for fuel. So I didn't tell her this because I heard from a podcast of what happened to this vegetarian. I wanted to see if it would be something. I saw her a month later, and she goes, and let me start off by saying that she was actually diagnosed as menopausal going into all this. 42 years old. She's had one period all year. And after she took the heart and the liver, and she took the encapsulated suet, she goes, I don't know what it is. Like, my energy is so much better. And my fat, like I've noticed like some of my fat has gone away. And I'm like, well, what have you done differently? She's like, nothing. I go, are you working out differently? She goes, no. I go, are you eating anything differently? She goes, no. I said, well, if everything is exactly the same and all you did was add in 6 heart and liver pills a day, which only adds up to 3 grams, by the way, and six of those little pills of suet, again, only 3 grams, and you were able to see that reaction, I'm telling you, this is 6 months later. She's still taking these pills. And I have another friend who's a vegetarian, who's my age, where she's had rosacea, like, she's had issues with her hair looking healthy, her skin looking healthy, like different things like that. And she started taking the heart and liver and the suet capsules. Her friends are like, you're glowing. Are you pregnant? She goes, no. Like, like like she literally looks that much better. And she was talking to my wife and she goes, you know what? I think I was lacking those nutrients so
Yeah.
severely that the moment they came in, the body's like, aha, this is what I've been waiting for. Thank you. I needed all the B vitamins. I needed my K2. I needed my CoQ10. I needed all of it because you were giving me junk. You were giving me junk food for the last 10 years. Something that I've been having to borrow from other parts of my body to be able to make all these vitamins bioavailable, because plant vitamins we have to process them. We cannot just take in K1. It doesn't work that way. We can't just take in, like, the vitamin A from a carrot and the vitamin A that you'll get from liver are two completely different vitamin A's. And people say, oh, take the vitamin A from the carrots. No. Go eat 10 grams of liver and tell me how you feel in 30 minutes. Like, you feel good, especially if it's something that you've done and you're used to it and your body knows what to expect. It's like, you feel amazing. If I went and I decided to eat, an ounce of liver right now, I'm going to want to work out. Every time I eat liver, I want to work out. I don't know how to explain it. It just gives me this energy. It's just amazing.
Energy, yeah. So you were mentioning your first friend who had breast cancer and she started taking the omega-3 capsules. I was not sure if I got it right. Did her cancer go into remission?
No, so at this point the cancer was gone, but she was still healing in a way like she's 42 years old, and she for the last 6 years she's had a non-consistent period. So when you start looking at that and then you see how it brought back her period, and it also helped her lose fat, because the stearic acid actually turns on your mitochondria. It says, hey, you need to burn fat for fuel. And it's like, oh, I remember how to do this. And with vegetarians, I see the biggest change because their body has lacked these nutrients for so long that they see the biggest impact almost immediately because their body wants it. And then once they feel that way, it's like they want to keep taking it. It's amazing. And my friend who's my age, she goes, well, I guess I may not be a vegetarian anymore.
Yeah. The thing is that at some point I also thought about turning vegetarian due to moral reasons, because I was like, not because I felt like brainwashed from the outside. This was more like an independent, intrinsic thought that I thought like, okay, if I eat meat, I might presume that, animals don't have the same consciousness as us. And the thing is, at least you could say, we don't know what their level of consciousness is. So, and I also would not eat a human. So I was like, maybe it would be more spiritual, morally clean to eat no more meat. But since, I had my gut issues and I started eating meat, and I learned about meat quite something in the last 2-3 years. And now I'm just thinking it would not be a good idea to abstain meat.
It's crazy. If you convince me to eat a vegetable, I will tell you that I will become bloated immediately. I just don't feel good. Like, the
Do you
moment
think
it
you
goes
would?
down.
Do you think you would get bloated, or, for example, after like 30 minutes when we were in the podcast, you said if you would eat, plants right now, you wouldn't feel well. Psoriasis might come back. Do you
I
think?
don't feel well. I feel like my skin feels like it starts to get that familiar itch.
Do you think it's a physical response or a mental response that you presume if you would consume that for a longer time, you wouldn't feel well? What do you think?
I think it is. I don't think it's a mental response, so to speak. I think it's more of a hyper-aware response, because we go our entire lives ignoring what our body tells us. We're in college, we have a test, we're tired, we study, we stay up late. We always do what we want to do, and we don't think about what our body tries to tell us. And when you get yourself in a situation where you learn how to quiet your mind and actually become a partner with your body, because our bodies, these are evolutionary machines that have been developed over a millennia, and to ignore what God has given us to help us become the strongest versions of ourselves and help us procure the future, it's just mind-blowing. So I think it's more so just once you learn how to become in tune with your body, it's like your whole world changes. Like I know for a fact, like, if I wanted to go have, if I wanted to have something grain-based, do I think it's going to destroy me? No. But do I think if I did that every day, do I think it will? I absolutely know for a fact that if I try and do it for multiple days, I will 100%, my IBS will come right back. And I know because I've experimented with it. I've last year there was a time where I experimented, and I was doing sourdough. And when I make sourdough, by the way, I extremely ferment it. I can't eat it because of my issues. But like for my son, like when I make him pancakes, I make ultra fermented. So it's like all the lectins,
Sourdough
like
pancakes.
but yeah, like basically like as to make it as healthy and as less intrusive in the body as possible. But it's not something that's all the time, but it's something that's there. But I know like when I decided to like from the sourdough bread, I was like, you know what, let me just throw some butter on that with some salt. And it's like, oh my God, that's so good. I did that the second day and I only had 2 slices, one day and I had one the next morning. And that night my IBS started. So it's just once your body heals from where it was at and something gets thrown back into the mix, it's really easy for because your body's been there. So your body can go right back. Like if I were to take that cup of coffee and I let that water fill up and it completely flushes it out so it's clear, and then I put one shot of coffee back in there, look how quickly that water turns cloudy. And look how much longer it takes for that water to turn clear again. And that's exactly how the body works. And that's my true mindset on it. Could it be slightly off? It could be. But I think when you have that type of a mindset, I think it's very healthy and it allows you to really decide if you wanted to have those nuts with your friends. Is that what I really want for this moment? Is that quality of me doing this? Am I going to get an experience that's going to make this moment worth it? And if so, do it. If you're going to enjoy those nuts, you're going to have fun with your friends and you're going to do it one time in a year and you're going to eat them for 30 minutes and then you're not going to consume it again after that. And you have true enjoyment from that experience. Life's all about experiences. Like if somebody tells me their greatest life is eating McDonald's every single day and just playing Call of Duty 16 hours a day, and that is the best life that they could have, and that is the best life they could imagine, I would tell them, you know what? If that is your best quality of life and you are extremely happy, do you? But if there is a day where you realize that your circadian rhythm is all messed up from all the blue light and you're realizing that your cortisol is all out of whack, which is why you have a beer gut, because that's a telltale sign that you have an overproduction of cortisol, is it literally stems to your gut. And then you have your adipose tissue in your gut creating estrogen because it's an organ in itself. And now you have cortisol that's adding fat. You have estrogen that wants to gain fat because that's why women naturally are a little heavier than men. It's because the estrogen has them store the fat because they're going to bear a child. They need that for childbearing. So when you start going down that whole rabbit hole, it's like, it's just not worth it. And if you come and speak to me, I'd be more than happy to help you. But I will never tell somebody that what they are doing in their life is wrong, because if they're happy, it's not wrong. Just because it's not my perfect life doesn't mean it's not yours. But then don't come to me and tell me what I'm doing is crazy, because I'm not going to come to you and say what you're doing is crazy. Yeah. I just want everyone to have their best quality of life.
Ubiquitous tolerance.
Now, do I think if they had a mainly animal-based diet that consisted of, basically all animal products and minimal vegetables and some fruit and honey, like, do I think they would flourish? Absolutely. But am I going to push that on them? No, because that's the difference between I believe the communities. Is you start looking at vegan and vegetarian and all this, it's like a cult. Oh, yeah. I think when it comes to where we are here, it's not so much a cult. It's like we're a bunch of people that have realized that if we eat a correct way, we get better, and we want to share that information. Yes. And that's why I go by the term ancestrally healed and not carnivore, because if for you to heal, you just need to cut out the seed oils, the sugars, and you could consume meat, fat, some fruit and honey, and maybe you want to consume some vegetables if that's what you want to do. And that gets rid of all your problems, and now you're living a perfect quality of life. Well, then maybe you came from a tribe that had a little more access to relatively available vegetation, and just so happens that that's what you've evolved from. So I'm not going to tell people don't do it. But what I'm going to say is please be really aware to the decisions that you're making, because if you start to notice yourself falling backwards, don't lie to yourself and say, oh, well, I really love eating the spinach and that's, it can't be that. Be like, well, just be real with yourself and notice if problems happen, let's start eliminating things and let's get back to where we're living optimally. But that's kind of like my whole outlook. I view myself as I'm your friend. I'm in your corner. You need me, I'm here for you. Any questions, any time of day, I'm here for you. I want you to flourish. I want you to feel just as healthy as I feel. And I'm going to keep living my way, trying to show through my content on Instagram and my reels and my relationships and my experiences with people to show that. And hopefully hopefully after seeing how healthy and how good I feel, you want to jump on the train and join the Ancestral family. And it seems like it's having a really good response. And a lot of people in this community, have used me just for information when they were just starting out. And when I get messages saying, well, I didn't really know what I was doing, and you giving me the idea with fat really changed things. It's like those messages knowing that I helped a person's day be better, and it's not just that day, but it's every day. It's like it's the most rewarding feeling, knowing that not only am I here helping my family, be the best that we can be, but I'm also giving people the tools to allow them to do the same thing for their family and their friends. And hopefully that's actually what's going to help get us to be a real planet of people that are eating right, people that are together, people that are focusing on the future and on how we could fix this planet. Because the reality is if we wanted to fix this planet, we could farm everything regenerative. That would be the answer. And I think as enough of us continue in this path and our mindset continues to grow, I do believe, maybe not in my lifetime, I hope, but I do hope that there becomes a time where this whole world is actually being done in a way that's sustainable for the planet and the people within it.
Does that sound like a good quote to wrap it up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Vincent. It was an absolute wonderful discussion.
It was an amazing conversation, and I didn't expect it to go 3 hours. Like, we probably could go another 2 hours, but I'm a little bit tired. I also need to eat, but 3 hours is great. And yeah, I really enjoyed your input. I really enjoyed your energy, and maybe we can inspire some people who will listen to the show.
Absolutely. And if there's ever a time in the future where you'd like to have me back on and we can go a little bit further into like micro sections of what we talked about, or if there's anything you feel like we might have missed and we want to come back to, I'll be more than happy to come back on. This was a wonderful conversation, and it was really, really nice to meet you, Vincent.